Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Jorge Cortez. Jorge Humberto Martinez Cortez was born on January 5, 1978, in Mexico City. He kept his childhood and teenage years private, only sharing that he often clashed with his mother, who cared deeply for him, and his father, who rarely intervened in their arguments. Jorge's strained family relationships likely contributed to his emotional isolation and the development of his aggressive and unstable personality. To escape his difficult home life, Jorge left at a young age and embarked on a journey across Mexico, taking on temporary jobs to support himself. He worked as a waiter in various bars in Mexico City, including those in the Rosa and Cona districts, and also relied on tips from tourists in the popular Villa Du and Cuac districts, known for their extensive infrastructure and diverse entertainment options. Jorge's life of crime began in this place. In 2010, he was arrested for theft and given a 4-year prison sentence. However, because it was his first offense, the judge decided to release him on bail. At the time, no one suspected that this decision would set free a man who would later become one of Mexico's most notorious criminals. After his release, Jorge met a girl named Adriana and fell in love. Initially, he treated her with kindness and attention, but as their relationship deepened, his behavior became increasingly violent. Adriana soon found herself a victim of his physical abuse. Exhausted by his cruelty, she decided to end the relationship, but Jorge refused to accept her decision. One night, Jorge violently attacked Adriana, dragging her down the stairs by her hair and breaking her nose. He beat her so severely that she lost consciousness. When she came to, she saw Jorge holding a lighter and threatening to kill them both if she didn't stay with him. Despite his threats, Adriana continued to resist, which further enraged Jorge. He attempted to strangle her by grabbing her neck with both hands. However, Adriana managed to break free, grabbed a hammer, and began fighting back. She was able to force Jorge out of the apartment and ultimately out of her life for good. This violent confrontation occurred in 2011, and although Adriana reported the incident to the police, Jorge was released on bail and avoided punishment. In hindsight, Adriana's escape from Jorge that night saved her from a potentially deadly situation. Jorge would go on to take the lives of multiple women in the future. After meeting Jorge, 18-year-old Yang Kyang Marie became his new victim. Yang was a Korean girl who was very close to her mother, Monica, and her sisters, particularly Anna. Anna was a lively and athletic young woman who balanced her studies in psychology with a part-time job at a restaurant. Yang met Jorge at one of the bars where he worked, and they were immediately drawn to each other. After a brief courtship, they started dating, but their relationship was marked by violence. Despite their frequent arguments, they stayed together. When Yang turned 19, she decided to declare her independence from her family and move to the city with Jorge. However, this change only made their problems worse. Jorge's behavior became increasingly controlling and abusive. He constantly monitored Yang's activities, calling her every hour at work and restricting her interactions with friends. As a result, Yang felt trapped and realized she was a victim of domestic violence. However, she hid the truth from others, including her family, to avoid causing them concern. Only a few close people, including her sister Anna and some friends, knew about the situation. Despite her family's warnings and advice to leave Jorge, Yang struggled to break free. She attempted to leave him multiple times but always returned, held back by her own fears and vulnerabilities. During this time, Yang underwent a significant transformation, changing from a happy and lively person to someone who was depressed and willing to do anything to please Jorge. The relationship continued to deteriorate, becoming increasingly toxic and damaging to Yang's well-being. Yang's relationship with Jorge was marked by violent outbursts. On one occasion, Jorge refused to let Yang into their apartment when she came home late. On another, he locked her inside, set her clothes on fire, and chased her around the room in a fit of rage. In August 2014, their arguments escalated, and Yang decided to leave Jorge and move in with her parents. A friend encouraged her to report Jorge to the police and end the abuse. Although Yang initially agreed, she eventually returned to Jorge and they continued living together. Tragically, Yang's life was cut short. On September 21st, her body was discovered in their apartment, bearing signs of severe bruising. Jorge claimed to have found Yang hanging in the bedroom, stating that he had left her sleeping at noon the previous day, September 20th, after she had worked a shift at the bar. Jorge claimed that he returned home on the morning of September 21st to find Yang deceased. He immediately contacted the police and notified Yang's family of the tragic event. The news of Yang's death was devastating to her family, prompting Monica and Anna to rush to the scene. Upon arrival, they found police officers and forensic experts already at the apartment, carefully removing Yang's body from the bed. Jorge stated that when he saw his deceased wife, he became frantic and attempted to assist her. A police officer explained to the family that an investigation was ongoing and they needed to stay outside the house to protect potential evidence. As they watched, Yang's body, covered with a sheet, was carried out of the house. The police also informed them that the initial evidence suggested Yang's death was a suicide, a conclusion supported by the position of the body in Jorge's account, which the police believed to be truthful. However, Yang's family was skeptical and struggled to accept this explanation, finding it hard to believe that she would take her own life. When the family arrived to identify the body and prepare the necessary documents, they were surprised to find that the examination protocol was almost complete. The death certificate stated that Yang had died from strangulation by hanging. However, when the relatives were allowed to view the body, they noticed bruises on Yang's legs that seemed suspicious. Jorge attempted to explain the bruises by saying that the body had slipped from his hands and fallen to the floor when he tried to move it from the bed. Monica was not convinced by Jorge's explanation and suspected that something was not quite right. Investigations revealed more about Yang's tumultuous relationship with Jorge, fueling suspicion that her death might not be the suicide police claimed. During police testimony, friends described constant fighting between they, revealing Jorge's history of jealousy and aggression. His behavior extended to frequent phone calls to Yang's workplace, indicating a pattern of controlling behavior. Yang's sister Anna noted that a few months before the tragedy, her behavior dramatically shifted. Anna added that she started distancing herself from the family once the relationship with Jorge started. This prompted concern within the family. Despite growing concerns about Jorge's unstable behavior and doubts about the official explanation, the police were quick to dismiss theories and rushed to close the case. Experts at the Katok morgue recommended cremating Yang's body, which meant that further forensic investigation would not be possible. Yang's mother was deeply suspicious of Jorge's involvement in her daughter's death, but she eventually agreed to the cremation due to pressure from her family, thereby giving up the chance to gather evidence to support her suspicions. Jorge did not attend the funeral, but he got a tattoo of a broken heart, supposedly to show his grief. However, he also cut off all contact with Yang's family. Yang's death had a devastating impact on her family, especially her mother, Monica. The overwhelming pain of losing her daughter, combined with feelings of loneliness and despair, led Monica to develop an addiction to alcohol and smoking. Monica was devastated when her daughter Yang passed away suddenly. Despite her overwhelming grief, Monica refused to accept the initial explanation of Yang's death, finding it contradictory to her daughter's outgoing and life-loving nature. Unsettled by details like the bruises on Yang's body and the lack of evidence supporting the claimed manner of death, Monica's instincts told her there was more to the story. To get answers, Monica launched her own investigation into the case. Monica acquired security footage from her daughter's home, revealing her son-in-law Jorge was the last person to see Yang alive. With the help of a private attorney and forensic pathologist, Monica reviewed Yang's final days. An unexpected development led to a shocking explanation, revealing a deeply seated scandal and a misclassified homicide. Monica's determination uncovered hidden details, ultimately revealing the truth behind Yang's death. The detective completely rejected the initial account of Yang's death, presenting conclusive evidence that proved she was murdered. Further investigation revealed several discrepancies with the original autopsy. There were no signs of hanging on Yang's body, but her neck showed signs of strangulation, and a scarf had been used to make it appear as though she had hanged herself. Bruises on her hands and fingernails suggested she had tried to fight back. The medical examiner confirmed that any competent expert would have reached the same conclusion. This raises serious questions. Why did the police ignore these facts, and why did the family receive a false report about their daughter's death? Monica's relentless pursuit of truth led her to conduct a 7-month investigation, uncovering a series of disturbing failures and incompetence by law enforcement agencies. Her research revealed that Yang had previously reported violence by Jorge to the police, but her cries for help were ignored. Monica also discovered that Jorge had ties to his father and the staff handling the case, which, combined with the severity of Yang's injuries and the apparent negligence of the authorities, compelled her to take decisive action. Monica appealed to the prosecutor's office, seeking a review of the case and justice for Jorge, the main suspect. However, she was met with neglect and cynicism instead of support. A prosecutor even questioned her competence, suggesting she should focus on being a housewife and seek psychological help rather than pursuing justice. Undeterred, Monica continued her investigation, driven by her love for her child and her desire for truth. Her perseverance ultimately paid off. Jorge committed another murder in 2016, a devastating end to Yang's story. This event began a new chapter in Kampira's life. She met Jorge online, where he hid his dark nature behind a charming facade. Unaware of his past, she was drawn to his friendly, sociable personality, and they soon developed a romantic relationship. Kampira's close friends discovered her new relationship when she posted a photo of herself and her boyfriend on social media, beaming with happiness. For several weeks, their romance seemed perfect. As 2016 drew to a close, Kampira's mother, Margarita, met Jorge for the first time on December 28. Kampira, Jorge, and her children then traveled to Acapulco to spend the New Year's holidays with her parents. However, Jorge later convinced Kampira to extend their stay, and she asked her mother to watch the children for a few more days. Margarita agreed, unaware of the tragedy that was about to unfold. 3 days later, Kampira was found dead. The last time Margarita had spoken to her daughter was on December 30th. When Margarita tried to call Kampira on New Year's Eve, she was met with silence. Kampira always answered her phone or returned calls promptly, so Margarita's anxiety grew with each passing minute. As the hours ticked by, Kampira's unusual silence and lack of online activity only heightened Margarita's concerns. Eventually, Margarita decided to contact Jorge to find out what had happened to her daughter. Jorge attempted to alleviate Margarita's concerns by downplaying the argument and Kampira departure to celebrate the new year with friends. However, Margarita remained unconvinced and asked a family friend to check on Kampira. When the friend arrived at Kampira's house, Jorge told him that Kampira was asleep and unable to meet with him. Margarita's suspicions grew, and she sensed that Jorge was hiding something. On December 31st, between 5 o'clock and 8 p.m., Jorge committed a heinous crime. He brutally murdered Kampira by strangling her after beating her severely with an unknown object, leaving multiple injuries on her face and body. In an attempt to make it appear as though Kampira had taken her own life, Jorge cut a lock of her hair, placed her body on the bed, covered it with a blanket, and left the gas stove on. He even placed a portrait of Campira's late ex-husband in her hand to create the illusion that memories of him had driven her to suicide. Around 8:30 p.m., Jorge packed his belongings and left the house. On the night of January 1, 2017, Margarita tried to contact her daughter Campira to wish her a happy new year, but was unable to reach her. She then called her son Gabriel, who was in the same city as Campira, and asked him to check on her. When Gabriel arrived at his sister's house, he was immediately hit with a strong smell of gas. After turning off the gas burners, he began searching for Campira and was shocked to find her body on the couch, bearing signs of a brutal beating on her face. As Gabriel threw off the blanket covering his sister's body, he was horrified by what he saw. Campira was wearing only her underwear, and her body was covered in numerous bruises. Several details caught his attention. There were drops of blood around her, although her body in underwear appeared clean, as if she had recently bathed. Additionally, Campira's head was almost completely shaved, which struck Gabriel as strange, as his sister was known to take great care of her hair. Gabriel reported the incident to the police and then called his mother to break the news to Margarita. Paramedics and police arrived, confirmed Campira's death, and restricted access to the scene. The family was stunned by grief, struggling to come to terms with what happened. Their eyes reflected sadness and a glimmer of hope for justice. The investigation was complicated by inconsistencies between the crime scene and the initial assumption of suicide. The police meticulously examined every detail to unravel the truth. The police initially suspected suicide, but Campira's family disputed this, finding it impossible to believe that a young, cheerful woman would take such a drastic step. Campira's family was convinced that her death was not a suicide, but a violent crime. A strand of hair found on her body that did not match anyone in the house reinforced their suspicions. They demanded a more thorough investigation, which was granted. A second forensic examination confirmed their fears, revealing that Campira was strangled and that the suicide scene was staged. The evidence included marks on her trachea and neck, bruises indicating a beating, and the absence of a strand of hair. The police launched an investigation, and Campira's aunt, Sandra, worked with the deputy prosecutor to have the case transferred to the prosecutor's office. However, progress was slow. Later, Sandra was called back to the prosecutor's office and informed that she and her brother, Gabriel, could be plaintiffs in the case. Campira's children were left with their grandmother after the tragedy. To shield them from painful memories, they were transferred to a new school. However, time alone didn't heal their wounds. 2 months later, the family was allowed to visit the apartment where Campira's body was found, collecting her belongings and possibly uncovering clues. Her laptop was found, but its data had been deleted. Fortunately, her iPad was password protected, and the last photos she took before her death were recovered. One disturbing photo showed Campira lying next to Jorge on the same sofa where her body was later found. Further investigation of the photos revealed more evidence. In one image, Jorge was seen holding a skull-shaped container that was later discovered in the apartment's freezer. He was also shown strangling Campira with one hand. Drawers in the desk yielded sketches of tattoos Jorge planned to get, further hinting at his possible involvement in the crime. The public was outraged when Jorge was released on bail in 2009, sparking widespread anger. Many realized that if he had been detained earlier, the young women might still be alive. The Campira and Yang families continued to demand justice for their loved ones on social media, gathering over 13,000 supporters on a memorial page. 10 months after his escape, Jorge was finally caught on October 24, 2017. His arrest was unexpected, occurring during a routine patrol by the National Civilian Police in Livingston, Guatemala. The officers were patrolling the streets when they noticed a suspicious man who appeared to be homeless. A routine check of his documents and fingerprints revealed a shocking truth. the man was on the international wanted list with a high danger level. Jorge was immediately arrested and taken to the immigration center in Guatemala City, where he was detained pending further action. The Guatemalan authorities quickly contacted their Mexican counterparts to initiate the extradition process. According to the head of the Guatemalan police, Pablo Castillo, Jorge had been hiding under a bridge in western Guatemala, living on the streets and relying on the kindness of tourists for survival. The next day, October 25th, Jorge was transported to the Mexican border city of Chicas, where he was handed over to the Mexican authorities. After crossing the border, Jorge was taken to Mexico City, marking the successful completion of the extradition process and the delivery of justice. Jorge appeared in court to face charges for his alleged crimes. A reporter managed to ask him a few questions, but Jorge responded with a complete denial of any wrongdoing, claiming he was unaware of the charges against him. This was despite being taken to court on October 26th for a preventive measure, specifically for the murder of Campura. During the trial, the prosecution presented strong evidence of Jorge's involvement in the crime. The investigation revealed that Jorge had brutally beaten the victim with an unknown object before strangling her to death. The prosecutor classified the crime as a feminicide, made worse by the fact that Jorge had a romantic relationship with the victim. The prosecutor also pointed out that Jorge had a prior conviction for theft and was possibly involved in the death of another ex-girlfriend, Jan. Despite the overwhelming evidence and arguments against Jorge, his lawyer proposed an alternative explanation that Jorge was mentally unstable and needed a psychological evaluation. This move came as the community awaited justice, expecting a suitable punishment for the perpetrator. After thoroughly examining the evidence, witness testimonies, and arguments, the judge turned his attention to Jorge and his lawyer. He asked how long it would take to complete the psychological evaluation. Following a consultation, Jorge's lawyer agreed that Jorge would attend all subsequent court hearings. Upon reviewing all materials and considering both sides, the judge rendered a verdict. There was sufficient evidence from the prosecutor to hold Jorge accountable for his crimes. The court ordered the investigation to continue and gave a 4-month deadline to gather new evidence. Meanwhile, Jorge was taken into custody and held at a pre-trial detention center. Despite Jorge's arrest and guilty verdict, the Campura and Jan families faced a lengthy and challenging process ahead. In August 2019, an oral hearing was held in Jorge's case. His lawyer asked the court to disregard the videos that showed Jorge entering and leaving Campura's house on the day she was murdered. They claimed that these videos were incomplete, taken from a 30-hour recording at the crime scene, and could not be used to prove Jorge's guilt. The videos had been given to the victim's family by a neighbor who recorded them. The family then passed them on to the police, who brought only partial recordings to court. The police had lost the original disc. Jorge's lawyer alleged that the Mexico City prosecutor's office had concealed this information, which only came to light on the day of the hearing. The defense lawyer argued that the materials used to obtain the arrest warrant were unlawful. Specifically, the lawyer claimed that a key video was given to the Campura family rather than the judicial authorities, and therefore could not be used as evidence. Despite this, the supervisory judge rejected the defense's petition after considering the prosecution's arguments and the testimony of Campura's friends and neighbors. Additionally, the court considered 2 witness statements, but did not accept them as evidence. The case proceeded, and Jorge was allowed to appeal the decision and present the same arguments again. Meanwhile, the Young family was dealing with their own separate case. A ban on violence against women was established in Mexico City, thanks in part to advocacy from several groups, including the Mexican Institute of Human Rights and Democracy and the Center for Justice. This new decree was influenced by multiple high-profile crimes, including the murder of Jan. As a result, her case was forwarded to a Mexico City court for trial. Nearly 7 years after Yang's murder, charges were formally brought against her suspected killer, Jorge, in May 2021. Shortly thereafter, a judge ordered his arrest for his role in her murder. Despite these developments, Jorge's defense team was able to significantly slow down the investigation and prosecution. 9 years after Yang's death, Jorge Humberto Martinez Cortez was sentenced to 52 years and 6 months in prison in November 2023 for taking Yang's life. While the Yang family has finally received justice, Campira's family still faces a lengthy process. A trial had been scheduled for April 2022 at the detention center where Jorge was being held. Activists were resolute that this time the perpetrator would not evade accountability. Jorge's lawyers have successfully delayed the hearing once again, which was set to take place on January 29, 2024. Over 50 witnesses were expected to be called to testify, but for now, there is no update on the status of the hearing in the media. Jorge's family remains hopeful that he will eventually be held accountable for his actions. While nothing can bring Campira back, they seek justice and want to ensure that her death does not go unpunished. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you, the case of Minhas Simon. Minhas Simon, a Canadian with a promising future. However, instead of attending York University to study mechanical engineering, he chose to deceive his parents and live a lie. As the expected graduation date drew near, maintaining this double life became increasingly difficult, severely impacting his mental state. This ultimately led to the tragic outcome of him murdering his entire family. In an attempt to gain attention, Minhas posted photos of his crime on his Discord channel. Initially, many believed it was a joke, but it soon became clear that the photos were genuine. Discord's anonymous features allowed Minhas to hide his true identity, making it challenging for users to uncover his real name, age, and location. In Bangladesh, a country plagued by poverty and overpopulation, many sought a better life abroad. Monarez, born in 1971, felt an insatiable desire to improve his circumstances. Despite the country's rapid development, Monarez yearned for more. He met and married Momtaz, born in India, and they shared a dream of building a better future together in Toronto, Canada. After 2 years of preparation, Monarez and Momtaz made the move to Toronto. They settled into their new life and eventually started a family. 6 years after their arrival, they welcomed a son, Minhas, followed by a daughter, Mesa, 2 years later. Momtaz and her husband Monarez were loving and dedicated parents who worked tirelessly to ensure their family's well-being and happiness. Momtaz was particularly close to their children and was known for her kindness and generosity. She spent a lot of time caring for her family and was always willing to lend a helping hand. In her community, Momtaz was a respected and well-liked figure, both in her neighborhood and among fellow Bangladeshi immigrants. Monarez was a more reserved person, but he was also highly respected in the community. He was a devout Muslim who prioritized his family's well-being above all else. As a taxi driver, Monarez was very familiar with the city of Toronto, thanks to his many years of experience. His dedication to his job earned him numerous awards, including being named the Best Employee of the Month and one of the top taxi drivers in his company. Both Momtaz and Monarez had high aspirations for their children, Melissa and Minhas. Having successfully navigated the challenges of moving to a big city themselves, they expected their children to achieve great things. They dreamed of their children securing high-paying, prestigious jobs that would bring them comfort and prosperity. After relocating from poor conditions, Monarez and Momtaz were determined to provide their children with every opportunity to succeed. They worked hard to achieve their aspirations, which led to gradual but steady success. The family's first major milestone was buying a modest house on Mowan Road in Scarborough. With careful financial planning, they then acquired 2 investment properties, one in Scarborough and another in nearby Danforth. Momtaz took charge of managing the properties, and over time, the family's wealth grew steadily. As the family's assets increased, Momtaz felt a greater sense of responsibility towards her 2 children and their 3 properties. To help with the workload, Momtaz's mother, Firoza Begum, moved from India to join the family. This allowed Momtaz to strike a better balance between her work and personal life. In 2006, the family upgraded to a larger 4-bedroom house in Markham. At the time, it was widely believed that a career in medicine or engineering was the key to success. Monraz and Momtaz wanted their children to pursue these fields, with Monraz aspiring to become a neurosurgeon and Monraz aiming to become an engineer. However, their children had different plans. Melissa, in particular, was a rebellious child who resisted her parents' views and often pushed them away, despite showing great potential. Melissa frequently ran away from home, drank excessively, and used illicit substances, leading to reckless behavior. This behavior prompted strict and sometimes questionable intervention from her parents. If she failed to return home on time, she would be forced to spend the night outside. However, her mother, Momtaz, would occasionally unlock the back door to allow her to enter. The conflicts between Melissa and her father often escalated, drawing the attention of the police. In contrast, Monraz had a distinctly different personality. He was often described as shy and introverted, but he shared a warm and loving relationship with his mother. Momtaz was extremely devoted to her son, often giving in to his wishes and catering to his needs. She would drive him wherever he needed to go, cook his meals, keep his room tidy, and greet him after school with a home-cooked meal. As the eldest son, Monraz faced pressure from his parents to succeed and meet their high expectations. To cope with this pressure, he found solace in the world of video games, particularly massively multiplayer online (MMO) games like Perfect World. In this virtual world, Monraz could express himself freely and connect with people worldwide, overcoming his shyness and self-doubt. The game became a refuge for him, and he spent most of his free time immersed in it. Monraz's life was quite routine. Apart from accompanying his father to the mosque, he spent most of his time in his room, playing online games with his friends. However, his life took a significant turn after he graduated from high school. He thrilled his parents with the news that he had been accepted into the mechanical engineering program at York University. Initially, this achievement brought immense joy to his parents, Monraz and Momtaz. However, it also intensified the pressure on Monraz, as he was now expected to excel and had no room for error. As a result, he became even more introverted and immersed himself in the online world. Monraz started playing an updated version of the Perfect World game, which involved a group of players and a set of rules. He used the social network Discord to stay in touch with his friends and fellow players. The game's atmosphere was generally friendly, and players often formed close bonds with one another. In fact, many of them remained in contact even outside of the game. Monraz felt more at ease expressing himself in the virtual world of the game than he did in real life, where the atmosphere was often tense. As a result, he found solace in the game, using it as an escape from the stresses of reality. In contrast, Melissa acted out her frustrations in the real world, frequently clashing with her parents over various issues. Her rebellious behavior eventually led to an arrest for shoplifting, although she was fortunate to have the charges dropped in exchange for community service. After leaving home to live with her boyfriend, the tension in the household did not dissipate. Instead, it seemed to intensify, putting even more pressure on Monraz to find ways to cope. As a result, he became even more deeply immersed in the game, using it as a means of escaping the increasingly unbearable reality at home. As Melissa broke free from her parents' expectations, they began to pin their hopes on her son, Monraz, as the family's savior. They boasted about his engineering career at York University, but this turned out to be a fabrication. In reality, Monraz attended Seneca Community College, a less prestigious institution. Monraz struggled academically, felt isolated, and abandoned his faith, which deeply disappointed his devout parents. He often expressed frustration about his parents' constant interference in his life, which affected his personal relationships. Min has met a girl online, which infuriated his parents and further fueled his resentment. However, he found a sense of independence through the online game Perfect World, where he connected with friends in a community on Discord. Initially, Min has performed well in school, but his grades began to slip as his gaming obsession spiraled out of control. Min has excessive gaming habits started to take a toll on his academic performance. He began skipping classes and struggled to keep up with his studies, resulting in him having to retake several subjects. Eventually, he lost interest in studying altogether and stopped attending classes, opting to focus solely on gaming instead. To avoid arousing his parents' suspicions, Minhas would leave home every day pretending to go to York University. He wasn't actually attending classes. Instead, he would spend his days playing games at a cafe on his laptop, working out at the gym, and then returning to gaming until late at night. In online conversations with his gaming friends, Minhas would occasionally joke about leaving the group and make cryptic comments about potentially going to prison. However, these statements were not taken seriously by his online friends, as they were familiar with his tendency to make humorous remarks. Additionally, Minhas often made jokes about sensitive topics such as homophobia and religion, but since it was a gaming community, no one took his comments seriously. Minhas' sense of humor took a darker and more aggressive turn over time. He started making jokes that were intentionally provocative, trying to elicit a reaction from others in the community. However, his attempts at humor were so off-putting that they led to multiple complaints. Ultimately, the community administrators banned him due to his behavior. Minhas became more and more isolated. In contrast, Melissa turned her life around, repaired her relationship with her parents, and even gained admission to York University. From the outside, the family appeared happy and successful, with new beginnings and a promising future. As Minhas realized he was about to lose his privileged status as the golden child, he committed a horrific crime on July 27, 2019, just one day before his expected graduation ceremony. On that day, the family was preoccupied with their daily routines. Minhas' mother and grandmother went about their usual schedule, attending a daybreak event, unaware of the impending tragedy. Minhas began to carry out his horrific plan by sneaking into his mother's bedroom. He struck her on the head with a crowbar, knocking her unconscious, and then slit her throat to ensure she was dead. He repeated this brutal act with his grandmother. After committing these heinous crimes, Minhas calmly returned to his room and opened Discord, where he sent a disturbing photo of his mother's mutilated body next to the crowbar. The recipients of the photo were initially unsure if it was a joke, as Minhas was known for his dark humor. However, the image was extremely realistic and did not appear to be a prank. Minhas was a well-known figure in the Perfect World gaming community, but his behavior had always been unsettling, earning him a negative reputation among many players. The situation took a disturbing turn when Minhas posted two photos that seemed to show a murder scene. The images were extremely realistic and did not seem to be a joke. Minhas then made a chilling post claiming that he had killed his mother and grandmother and was waiting for his sister and father to return home so he could do the same to them. As the situation worsened and became more intense, other gamers began to take Minhas seriously, fearing that his threats could lead to more deaths. Discord users were convinced that they were witnessing a series of crimes unfold in real time, but felt powerless to intervene. Desperate to prevent further harm, players tried to uncover Minhas' identity, but he had hidden his personal information, leaving no clues about his name, age, or whereabouts. In an effort to gather more information, users reached out to Minhas' friend, Junior, asking him to share any details he might know. When Junior confronted Minhas about the disturbing images, Minhas revealed that his threats were genuine and that he planned to kill his father and sister soon. Meanwhile, Melissa returned home to an eerily quiet house. Unbeknownst to her, Minhas was waiting inside. As she entered the house, he attacked her with a crowbar, striking her on the head, and then slit her throat. After committing the crime, Minhas took a photo of Melissa's body and sent it to his friend John via private message. Minhas posted a photo with a disturbing message, claiming that he had struggled with his sister Melissa for 10 minutes, during which she cried and screamed. In a private message to John, Minhas expressed extreme self-loathing, stating that his parents would be ashamed of him and that he was a coward and subhuman. Minhas then sent John several more photos, including one of the murder weapon and a selfie with a bloody knife. John was horrified and shared these photos with the rest of the group, confirming that Minhas had indeed committed a third murder. Group members quickly saved the photos as evidence against Minhas. Meanwhile, Minhas continued to act normally, waiting for his father to return home. When his father, Monaras, entered the garage, Minhas ambushed him, stabbing him in the neck, just like his other victims. Minhas took a photo of the victim, which the group was unable to prevent. In a shocking turn of events, Minhas shared a disturbing message with online friends, stating, "I consider myself a coward and a loser. As an atheist, I don't believe in an afterlife, so I feared death and wanted others to die instead, sparing them suffering. I realize now how pathetic and selfish I've been." What followed was even more alarming. Minhas told another online friend that he had murdered his entire family and was prepared to spend the rest of his life in prison. He then invited this friend to view photos of the crime scene. However, the story takes a crucial turn. One of the online friends discovered a way to obtain Minhas' IP address, which could reveal his location. With this information, the group was able to track Minhas to his home in Toronto. A user from Minnesota, who was part of the online conversation, contacted their local police department, which in turn alerted the Toronto police to Minhas' location. The police began their investigation after receiving information from an anonymous source. Meanwhile, Minhas was still active online, chatting with users who were inquiring about his next steps. He claimed he would try new things, including drinking, smoking, and reconnecting with an ex-girlfriend. However, it was only a matter of time before the police caught up with him. They were able to track his IP address, contacted his internet service provider, and obtained his physical address. Surprisingly, Minhas did not take steps to cover his digital tracks, despite being an avid gamer and computer user. Just 12 hours after the crime, officers arrived at the Minhas residence. As they looked up, they saw Minhas looking out of his bedroom window. At this point, the police had limited information and evidence, relying mostly on tips from online users. They were uncertain about the accuracy of the reports. But Minhas unexpectedly made the police's job easier. After posting a farewell message on Discord, announcing that the police had arrived, he voluntarily went downstairs, opened the door, and surrendered to the authorities. When questioned by the police, Minhas responded that this was his family's home and that they would discover the truth for themselves. The bodies of Monaras and Melissa were the first to be found, followed by Momotaz and Firoza, near the entrance to the house. Minhas was immediately arrested by the police on suspicion of murder. He was then taken to the local police station for further questioning. During the interrogation, Minhas displayed unusual calmness, showing no visible emotion. The lack of emotional response was notable, as if he was discussing an inconsequential event. He was ultimately charged with 4 counts of murder, 3 first-degree murders and 1 second-degree murder. In court, the evidence strongly indicated his guilt. The Perfect World gaming community had preserved a record of all his online messages, which served as evidence against him, confirming his culpability to a great extent. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Graciela Graciela. Graciela Graciela was born on October 6, 19, in Mexico, to a working-class family who sought a better future for their children. To achieve this, her parents made the decision to immigrate to the United States, ultimately settling in Hermiston, Oregon. As Graciela was very young at the time of the move, she has no recollection of the challenges associated with relocating. Upon reaching school age, Graciela attended Umatilla High School, an institution that predominantly served students from low-income backgrounds. The school provided all students with free meals, reflecting the socioeconomic status of its student body, of which 66% were Hispanic. It was here that Graciela's sociable nature and innate charm enabled her to effortlessly form friendships among her peers. After graduating, she proceeded to enroll in the business department at Blue Mountain College. From a young age, Graciela had always dreamed of becoming a hairstylist and owning her own beauty salon. With determination and hard work, she believed she could make her dreams a reality. By February 2006, she had achieved her goal and became the owner of Cuz Beauty Salon. Graciela's talent and charisma quickly made her a well-known figure in society. As the salon's owner, she always presented herself well, which added to the salon's positive image. Her passion for her job and understanding of the latest beauty trends ensured a steady stream of clients. Over time, some of these clients became close friends, who were always welcome at her home. Graciela was highly respected in the town, not only for her professional success but also for her interesting and happy personal life. Her first love, with whom she had 2 daughters, Annabelle and Gabriella, also known as Gabby, was someone she met in her youth. Although the relationship didn't last long, and the father of her children left the family, Graciela didn't let this setback hold her back. Instead, she focused on self-improvement and continued to move forward as a single mother. Graciela later earned a degree in cosmetology. She then met a kind-hearted man of Mexican descent named Romero Sanchez, and they got married. Her children from a previous relationship reported that she never regretted this decision. Her husband was caring not only to her but also to her children, treating them as his own. The family later welcomed 2 more children, Arthur and Jacob. Although he had biological sons, Graciela's husband still affectionately referred to Annabelle and Gabriella as his girls. Gabby considered her stepfather to be her real father, as he consistently supported, protected, and cared for them. The couple prioritized keeping their family united and happy, raising 4 children together. This did not deter Graciela from pursuing her passion. Instead, she would often take her children with her to professional meetings. The family developed a lovely tradition of traveling together, exploring new cities, local attractions, and cultural features. They also prioritized staying connected to their roots, frequently visiting Mexico and enjoying quality time together. Everyone made a genuine effort to make each other happy. However, after 17 years of marriage, the couple decided to separate. Graciela and her ex-husband chose not to burden each other with their dwindling feelings, opting to preserve the respectful relationship they had built over the years. Even after the divorce, they maintained a warm and strong connection. The father remained involved in the children's lives, regularly seeing them and sharing custody of their youngest son with Graciela. The other children were grown and lived on their own, but they remained close to their parents. They would get together to celebrate holidays and often sought each other's advice. Graciela handled her divorce well, remaining optimistic and confident, thanks in part to her ex-husband's kind and understanding behavior during this challenging time. On November 9, 2019, Romero made an unexpected visit to Annabelle, Graciela's eldest daughter. Annabelle was surprised to see her mother's new husband show up unexpectedly. Romero told Annabelle that Graciela had disappeared. According to Romero, he and Graciela had met with Jacob the previous night. Afterward, Romero returned home and went to bed beside Graciela, who was already asleep. However, when he woke up in the morning, Graciela was gone. He searched the house but couldn't find her. Romero tried to contact Graciela by calling and texting her, but she didn't respond. He went to Annabelle's place hoping she might have some information about Graciella's disappearance. Annabelle, however, had no idea where her mother was. She was shocked not only by the news of her mother's disappearance but also by Romero's reaction. He was in tears and seemed genuinely upset. Annabelle found this odd because Romero had never shown any strong emotions around them before, only indifference. Romero mentioned that Graciella had been acting strangely and might have found someone else. He admitted she might have needed a break from their relationship and wasn't sure if she was truly happy with him. However, Annabelle found his words insincere and his tears overly dramatic. She started to worry about her mother and found Romero's behavior suspicious. Romero had previously avoided talking to Graciella's children, but suddenly reached out to them. After he left, Annabelle told the rest of the family what happened. They gathered at Graciella's house to figure out what was going on. Her car was still parked in the driveway, which was unusual since she would have likely taken it if she were leaving Romero. The house was also spotlessly tidy, which was out of character for Graciella, who preferred a more creative and chaotic space. If she were planning to leave, her belongings would have been scattered around the room. Graciella spent a considerable amount of time in front of the mirror, carefully selecting an outfit for the day. However, she surprisingly left all her treasured jewelry at home, including her favorite rings and necklaces that she wore daily. This unusual behavior raised concerns among her family members, who couldn't help but imagine worst-case scenarios, including the possibility of her fleeing. While searching the house, Gabby stumbled upon something peculiar, a large, heavy blanket in the washing machine. This was unusual because their mother, Graciella, always emphasized the importance of not overloading appliances. It was likely that Romero, who normally didn't participate in household chores, had washed the blanket. This sparked suspicion that he might be trying to conceal something. It was later discovered that along with Graciella, several important items had gone missing from the house, including her passport, driver's license, and mobile phone. On November 11th, Annabelle went to the police station to report her mother, Graciella, missing. However, she was surprised to find that Romero, Graciella's husband, had not informed the police about her disappearance, despite knowing about it since November 9th or possibly earlier. As a result, Annabelle became the first person to file a missing person report for her mother. Romero's distant personality had been a concern for Graciella's family since they met him. Graciella had met Romero at her beauty salon, where he was a client, after her divorce. Their initial friendship eventually developed into a romantic relationship. However, when Graciella introduced Romero to her family, they noticed his aloof and cold demeanor. Annabelle and her sister, Gabby, tried several times to connect with Romero, but he did not reciprocate, leaving Graciella's children puzzled by his behavior. They initially attributed it to individual personality differences, especially compared to their mother's previous relationships. They were eager to understand their mother's partner and what motivated him. At times, he seemed strange and aloof to them, and they struggled to comprehend how someone as lively and joyful as their mother could be drawn to someone so serious and reserved. Despite their reservations, they respected her decision. When their mother shared the news of her upcoming wedding, everyone rallied around her, particularly the girls, who wanted to see her happy and loved. On the wedding day, guests couldn't help but notice Romero's haughty demeanor and restraint. Some even perceived him as excessively possessive, as he dominated the bride's attention. When Graciella's young children came to congratulate the newlyweds, Romero responded with disdain rather than warmth and affection, making it clear that he didn't want to share his wife's attention with anyone, not even her own family. After that, Graciella's relatives struggled to hide their genuine opinions about Romero. Annabelle even went so far as to say she didn't consider him a stepfather, let alone a father figure. The family simply wanted to have a normal relationship, like those found in any civilized household. Following the wedding, Graciella and Romero moved in together, along with her youngest son Jacob, into Graciela's home. Jacob shared that shortly after the wedding, Romero started behaving as if he was the sole owner of the house. The boy recalled that the initial honeymoon phase was brief, and soon the family started to fall apart. He observed that his mother initially tried to establish personal boundaries, but being non-confrontational, she quickly gave in to Romero's demands. This seemed to suit Romero, who had a quick temper and never apologized first. To avoid creating tension in the household, Graciela often conceded to Romero's wishes. As time went on, it seemed she realized she had rushed into the marriage without fully thinking it through. In private conversations, Graciela confessed to feeling trapped and suffocated in the relationship. Her husband exerted control over her, never allowing her to go anywhere alone. Despite this, she never expressed any desire to leave the abusive relationship, suggesting she was still in love with Romero. Everyone realized that Graciela was in a relationship with the wrong person. It became apparent that her partner, Romero, was jobless and financially dependent on her. The Graciela family, who valued hard work, found it frustrating that Romero was always by Graciela's side without any apparent reason. Romero was a master manipulator who kept a close eye on Graciela, monitoring her interactions, including her friendships with other women. He would either prevent her from going out or show up unexpectedly, as if checking on her loyalty. His extreme jealousy was suffocating. Graciela felt embarrassed by his behavior, which led her to isolate herself socially, only interacting with her family. This had a negative impact on her professional life, as her job required frequent client meetings and attending industry events. Those close to Graciela noticed a significant change in her demeanor. She looked sad, worn out, and had lost her usual cheerfulness. It was clear that she was unhappy. Even her children observed the changes in her mood and appearance, as well as her loss of independence. They discussed their concerns among themselves and concluded that, although they didn't like Romero, he was Graciela's choice, and they had to respect her decisions. Other relatives shared the family's distrust of Romero. However, no one knew how to intervene or offer support. The couple's issues were serious enough to require professional help. Gabby had once suggested this to her mother, but Graciela insisted on handling her personal life independently. In 2018, Graciela suddenly announced that she would relocate her beauty salon to her home, citing convenience. Her family was skeptical, as she had never mentioned this plan before, despite running the salon for 12 years. Some clients noted that Romero often hung around the salon, creating tension and disrupting the usually warm atmosphere. While some thought Graciela made the move to solve a problem, others suspected that her jealous husband was behind the decision. Despite the initial doubts, Graciela remained enthusiastic about the change, saying it allowed her to spend more time with Jacob and Romero. By the end of 2018, she and her husband were remodeling a room for the salon, but the project took longer than expected and wasn't completed until May 2019. Although the salon was closed temporarily, Graciela's reputation remained intact, and rumors of the studio's reopening attracted a long queue of clients, including new ones, months in advance. Graciela was thrilled with her professional success but became increasingly private about her personal life. Return to the moment before of Graciela's disappearance. Another incident raised concerns about Graciela's safety. She asked her daughter Gabby to pick her up, which was unusual. But she claimed everything was fine and said she was just having a disagreement with her husband. When they met up, they spent time together and Graciela seemed to relax. She smiled and told Gabby not to worry, saying that couples' arguments are normal and can actually bring people closer together. Despite this, Gabby couldn't shake off her worries and remained uneasy about her mother's situation. After Annabelle contacted the police, the relationship between Graciela's family and Romero rapidly deteriorated. He offered an explanation for his wife's disappearance, suggesting that she might have wanted some time alone or could have left with another man, and he believed she would soon return. This was his standard response to anyone inquiring about the situation. However, the police took the report seriously and initiated an investigation, considering the possibility that Graciela could have been a victim of a crime. They began by searching her home, where they found that only a few personal items were missing, with nothing else seeming out of the ordinary. The police also interviewed Graciela's children, her husband, and others close to the family, including her ex-husband. Although everyone expressed skepticism about Romero's behavior, the investigation did not uncover any significant information. Romero cooperated with the detectives, allowing them to search his home, participating in interrogations, providing his DNA, and undergoing a polygraph test. Despite his cooperation, the police did not have sufficient grounds to arrest him, so the investigation continued. Analysis of Graciela's phone records revealed her last known location was near a bridge in Washington on November 9 at 12:30 p.m., when the signal stopped after her phone was turned off. Her bank accounts and social media remained inactive. Despite questioning hundreds of witnesses and checking all her frequent locations, investigators found no signs of her. The investigation deemed her disappearance suspicious due to the complete lack of evidence. For months into the investigation, the Hermiston police publicly stated that they had no confirmed information about Graciela's last sighting. Although Romero didn't report Graciela missing, the authorities didn't accuse him of anything. The police's stance frustrated Graciela's relatives, causing them to reduce communication with law enforcement. The family eventually stopped receiving weekly updates, forcing Graciela's children to contact the police station directly for information. As of March 2020, there were no new developments in Graciela's case. In an effort to revive the investigation, Graciela's family reached out to the media, hoping to raise public awareness and gather information. They believed even small details could be crucial. Gabby, a family member, expressed the family's frustration and disappointment with the police's lack of progress in the case. The Graciela family urged investigators to focus on finding Graciela, as they suspected foul play due to the state of her belongings and the unusual circumstances at home. It was unclear who would harm her, as she had no known enemies. Her family knew she wouldn't leave without contacting them, and the lack of communication suggested something was seriously wrong. The family also requested a new detective team, citing concerns of bias and collusion with Romero, whom they believed was somehow connected to the case. The family pointed out numerous inconsistencies in the investigation. It was found that Romero's phone had been turned off on the day his wife went missing, and his actions didn't seem like those of someone who was worried about a loved one disappearing suddenly. The Graciela family asked for Romero to be arrested. Police Chief Jason Edmiston quickly responded to these claims. He agreed that Mrs. Graciela's disappearance seemed suspicious and might involve something criminal. He said this was just one idea, but promised that the investigation would stay fair and be based on evidence and facts. Edmiston also denied that Romero had any connections to the police that might affect the case. Edmiston mentioned that false information was spreading and making the investigation harder. He said the case was ongoing and that some information had to be kept secret. The police also asked the FBI for help. Edmiston expressed frustration that people were criticizing the police without understanding how complicated the law is. At the same time, Gabby started a fundraiser to hire a private investigator. This move was seen as criticism of how the police were handling the case, suggesting they weren't doing their job well. 1 year after Graciela's disappearance, her family and friends held a memorial event to honor her memory and pray for her safe return. They lit candles and posted signs outside the police station, urging authorities to continue searching for her. In September 2023, a significant development in the case occurred when Romero Sanchez, Graciela's husband, was severely injured in an attack. There was speculation that Mason Graciella's brother, was involved in the incident, but details and any potential consequences for Mason were not disclosed. It appeared that Graciella's family had become frustrated with the police's lack of progress in investigating Romero, leading to a potentially frightening outcome. Graciella's disappearance remains an unsolved mystery, leaving her family in unbearable uncertainty that's taking a devastating toll on their health. Her children are left with only prayers, hoping for clarity and justice, unsure if she's alive. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you, the case of Kimberly Antonakis. Kimberly Antonakis was born in 1974 in New York, USA. She was the only child in the family. Despite the fact that she grew up in love and affluence, she was not pampered. Her parents came from simple families. Nevertheless, her father Thomas managed to achieve considerable heights. He created his own company, which was engaged in computers, earned funds. The man was happy to spend on his favorite daughter and her desires. When Kimberly was a little girl, her parents divorced. The child was left to live with her mother. However, this did not weaken the connection between the little girl and her father. He took her on weekends and spent all his free time with her. When Kimberly's mother found a new man and decided to move to Florida, she faced a choice to stay with her mother or with her father. Since she didn't want to move, the young lady decided to live with her father. Kimberly was very close to her father and enjoyed living with him. As she grew up, she became a well-behaved, sociable child and eventually a stunning young woman with a radiant smile that always lifted her spirits. She had a great sense of humor and a positive attitude. Kimberly was raised in a sheltered environment, surrounded by love and care, which protected her from the harsh realities of life. As a result, she only saw the good in people and was largely unaware of the darker aspects of life. Unfortunately, her open and kind nature would eventually lead to many sorrows. In 1994, Kimberly enrolled at the College of Staten Island. Shortly after, she told her father that she felt ready to live on her own. Although Mr. Kimberly was worried about her decision, he respected her independence and decided not to oppose it. He promised himself that he would do his best to ensure her safety and well-being in her new living arrangements. Kimberly bought a nice apartment for his daughter, located in a wealthy area of the city, and installed an alarm system to ensure her safety. He also purchased a parking space in the garage across the street so she wouldn't have to park far away. To stay in touch, he provided her with a cell phone and a pager. Kimberly did everything in his power to ensure his daughter's well-being. His concerns for her safety were well-founded, given his wealth and her limited life experience. Kimberly was a diligent student who also worked part-time as an accountant at a reputable firm. She had declined her father's offer to join the family business, opting instead to forge her own path. Kimberly led a typical student life, attending parties and socializing with friends. She declined her father's offers to return home, wanting to maintain independence. This led to an unexpected situation when she let friend Liz Pace and her family stay while their apartment was being renovated in early 1995. Kimberly, with a kind heart, invited young people to her lodging. They spent days having fun together. One day, Kimberly and a friend attended a party, getting ready and dressing up. After a fun night of dancing, Kimberly drove them home but didn't go up, citing unfinished business. They hugged goodbye, unaware they'd never see each other again. After visiting the police, Mr. Kimberly's father, went to the parking lot next to her house, only to find that her car was missing from the garage. As he looked around, he spotted a shiny object on the floor near the wall, a small gold earring. He recalled giving his daughter similar earrings and, just in case, picked it up. However, Kimberly was nowhere to be found in the apartment. Instead, he met her guests, including a friend, her boyfriend Joshua Torres, and their 2-year-old child. Although Kimberly was aware of Kimberly's decision, he didn't agree with it. The tenants were worried about the hostess's absence and Joshua offered to help find her. He said he was looking for Kimberly and would assist later. Kimberly returned to the police station, explaining that his daughter had been in an accident, but the officers remained unconvinced. Kimberly decided to speak with Liz Pace, the last person to see Kimberly, and showed her the jewelry he had found. Liz Pace confirmed that she had seen Kimberly wearing those earrings on the night she disappeared. Kimberly then visited the places his daughter frequently went to, talking to many people, but didn't gather any significant information. Joshua suggested searching not only for Kimberly but also for her distinctive car. Kimberly went to the police station for the 3rd time, insisting that he wouldn't leave until they began a search. A detective eventually responded to his appeal, agreeing to take on the investigation despite the usual protocol. To better understand the events surrounding Kimberly Antonakis' disappearance, investigators started by reconstructing her activities on February 28. Kimberly began the day by attending college, followed by a few hours of work. After work, she returned home and had dinner with friends before heading out to a party with a friend named Liz Pace. The evening concluded with their return home around 4 a.m. Following her return, Kimberly went to the parking lot for reasons that remain unclear. Both her apartment and garage were thoroughly searched, but no signs of struggle or foreign fingerprints were found. This lack of evidence suggested either a meticulous cleanup or that any potential intruder may have worn gloves. The most puzzling aspect was the disappearance of Kimberly and her car without any trace, except for a single earring that was found. An analysis of Kimberly's bank account revealed that her last transaction occurred the evening before she vanished, ruling out the possibility that she had run away from home. Based on the evidence, detectives hypothesized that Kimberly was likely kidnapped. The investigation expanded to include additional police officers. Due to the lack of concrete leads, law enforcement considered information from a psychic. Witness interviews began with Liz Pace and Joshua. They revealed 65 calls were made from Kimberly's landline on March 1st. Joshua explained he made these calls to locate Kimberly, who was like a little sister to him. Liz Pace's testimony helped determine Kimberly's clothing in a portrait was created, highlighting her distinctive tattoos, including a scorpion and infinity sign. Meanwhile, a search for the missing car was underway, with checks at scrap metal collection points and other locations where the vehicle might be found. Unfortunately, no positive results were obtained. A check of Kimberly's cell phone was also unsuccessful. Police advised Kimberly to pay attention to any letters or phone calls he received, as they might be from Kimberly's kidnappers demanding a ransom. The Kimberly family remained in a state of uncertainty until March 4th. At approximately 2 a.m., emergency services responded to a reported fire at a large, abandoned house located at 86 Woodhaven Avenue in Queens. Multiple fire crews battled the blaze until it was finally extinguished. Upon investigation, a charred body was discovered in the basement of the building. Further analysis by forensic experts revealed the deceased was a woman between 20 to 25 years old, with remnants of long, black hair still intact. There were also signs of tape and evidence that her legs had been bound, with her hands tied behind her back. The most disturbing aspect, however, was that she was alive at the time of the fire, as indicated by the presence of smoke in her lungs. Detectives initially suspected that the body might belong to Kimberly, a missing person. To confirm the identity, dental records were required. Meanwhile, an inspection of the ashes and the air revealed the scent of gasoline, strongly suggesting that the fire had been intentionally set to destroy evidence of a serious crime. Despite the absence of other evidence, the charred body remained, and upon closer examination, specialists found tattoos matching the description of the missing woman. The records from the dental clinic supported the investigation's suspicions, leading to the discovery of Kimberly Antonakis's body. As more details emerged, an eyewitness came forward who often walked his dog in the area. The dog had been acting strangely in the days prior to the fire, appearing nervous and barking at the house for no apparent reason. It wasn't until after the fire and the discovery of the body that the cause of the dog's behavior became clear. She had attempted to escape and called for help, but her cries went unheard by humans. However, the dog's acute hearing allowed it to detect the sounds coming from the basement, explaining its unusual behavior. When questioned by officers, the homeowner revealed that he had visited the building multiple times in recent days. He was trying to sell the house and would regularly check on its condition, collect mail, and pick up receipts. However, he only inspected the house from the outside and never went into the basement. The homeowner claimed he never heard any suspicious noises, and if he had, he would have investigated. Investigators decided to re-question Joshua, as they had some reservations about him. They also found it strangely coincidental that his name started with the letter J. This time, Joshua mentioned a person he hadn't been able to contact the day Kimberly went missing, a young man nicknamed Psycho, a Russian national who had previously dated Kimberly. The detectives looked into this new information and discovered that the Russian had moved to the US with his parents at a young age. As he grew older, he became involved with a gang and had a history of breaking the law. This led to the identification of the first suspect, who was soon taken into custody. During interrogation, Psycho was informed of his former lover's death, but his reaction shocked the detectives. The young man not only denied involvement in the crime, but he also showed genuine emotional distress. Investigators took him to the crime scene to observe his behavior, and it became clear to everyone that they had the wrong person in custody. Later, his alibi was confirmed, leaving the investigation at a standstill once again. The victim's family sought the psychic's help again. This time, she claimed to have seen 4 people involved in the crime. According to her, the kidnappers had initially intended to establish communication but failed. The kidnapping didn't seem to have been planned with a tragic outcome. The psychic concluded that new information would emerge soon. A couple of days later, Mr. Kimberly, hoping to gather some leads, announced a $10,000 reward for information that could help catch the perpetrator. Mr. Kimberly couldn't shake off the psychic's words. He pondered the psychic's statement about the kidnappers wanting to make contact. What could that mean, and what had prevented them from doing so? Upon returning home, he sat at the table and stared at his phone for a while. He suddenly recalled a minor detail from the day Kimberly went missing. He had listened to all the answering machine recordings as he had been expecting his girl to contact him. However, there were no messages, except for 2 blank ones with complete silence. He initially thought it was a technical issue or a problem with the connection. But it later became clear that this was not the case. 5 days after her body was found, the police located her car in a quiet area of town, not far from where her body was discovered. The investigators were hoping to find fingerprints in the car, but it had been thoroughly cleaned. The only evidence they found was her hair and a second earring in the passenger compartment. Although it seemed like a breakthrough, it didn't lead anywhere. Kimberly, her father, was linked to a local mob hit due to his wealth and success. However, detectives found no evidence to support the rumors. Kimberly, grieving the loss of his daughter, denied any involvement and was found to conduct his business openly and honestly. In July 1995, a burglary suspect was arrested at a New York City residence. Surprisingly, he shared information about the Kimberly case. The suspect claimed an acquaintance told him that his friends had kidnapped and killed she by burning her. Upon hearing the unidentified man's name, the officers pieced together the crime. The man in question was Joshua Torres, Kimberly's roommate who had participated in the search for her. Detectives took a closer look at the young man, calling him in for further questioning. Although he denied any involvement in the crime, a lengthy conversation revealed a potentially incriminating statement. He mentioned that if he were the kidnapper, he would have fed the victim Kimberly. This statement raised suspicions since there had been no public mention of the victim's hunger, thirst, or cold, and not even her father was aware of these details. To strengthen their case, investigators examined the suspect's past, finding a criminal record and a pattern of obsessive behavior. He was jobless and financially dependent on his roommate, caring for her child, which gave him unmonitored time to plan the crime. Knowing Kimberly's daily routine allowed him to abduct her and hide her in a vacant house. It was unclear why no ransom demands were made. Analyzing the suspect's calls revealed he lied about contacting Kimberly's acquaintances. The dialed numbers belonged to random individuals with no connection to Kimberly. Suspicious messages on his pager further implicated the suspect, Joshua. He had long been a suspect in the eyes of detectives, and they finally gathered enough evidence to arrest him. During the interrogation, they informed him that Kimberly's ex-boyfriend was no longer considered a suspect. Pressed for more information, Torres revealed that he suspected his friends of being responsible for her murder. Torres claimed that he thought his friends only intended to kidnap Kimberly for ransom and then release her unharmed. He admitted to being an accessory to the kidnapping but maintained that he did not think his friends would resort to violence. According to Torres, the plan was to demand a ransom and then let Kimberly go, but things did not go as planned. The kidnappers became frustrated when their ransom demands were met with silence from Mr. Kimberly. Unbeknownst to them, their calls had been answered by Kimberly's father, and a ransom message had even been recorded. However, due to a technical issue, the recording was not saved on the answering machine. The kidnappers, feeling ignored and angered by the lack of response, decided to wait and see how events would unfold. It turns out the group feared public attention, and the psychics claim that the suspect's name began with the letter J. This information was published and broadcast on TV, creating a cycle of events. Joshua was released on bail after speaking with the police, but then disappeared. Around the same time, Jose was shot while walking with his wife. Jose's wife later told investigators that her husband didn't trust Joshua and had been gathering evidence against him. She claimed Jose felt guilty about kidnapping Kimberly but not about the house fire. He wanted to confess to the police, just as he had to her. The pager messages and suspect statements helped investigators piece together the kidnapping and crime details. 4 men were involved: Joshua, Julio Negrin, Jose Negrin, and Nicholas Brett, also known as Jay. Notably, Julio had previously dated Kimberly and proposed, but she rejected him. The group was united by friendship and a shared criminal past. However, their actions were far surpassed by the horrific treatment of she at the hands of the guys. Nicholas had recently been released on bail, thanks to his mother's intervention, and had received a lenient fine for a crime that could have resulted in a prison sentence of over a year. Joshua had a history of serious offenses, including child abduction, violence against a minor, and illegal possession of weapons, despite his young age. Nevertheless, he too had received an inappropriately light sentence for his crimes. It was evident that Joshua was the ringleader, responsible for coordinating the group's actions. After Kimberly left the party, the men seized her in the parking lot, having apparently been stalking her and waiting for the ideal moment to strike when she was alone. A gun was used to intimidate Kimberly. When she resisted, the perpetrators tied her hands and covered her mouth, eyes, and ears with duct tape. They then put her in the trunk of a car and drove her to an abandoned house, where she was taken to the basement and tied to a chair. To prevent her from making noise, they removed her shoes. The kidnappers told Kimberly that her father owed them money and that she would be released once he paid the debt. Julio was tasked with caring for Kimberly, bringing her food and water twice a day, and keeping her warm. However, fearing the consequences, Julio abandoned the house, leaving Kimberly without food, water, or warmth for 3 days. Once Julio left, the kidnappers informed Joshua, who made an audio recording demanding a ransom of $775,000. Then, the kidnapper called Kimberly's father, leaving 2 empty messages. The kidnappers waited for a response, genuinely confused as to why Kimberly's father didn't contact them. Meanwhile, Kimberly, left unattended, suffered from dehydration, passing out multiple times, yet continued to fight for her life. The kidnappers grew angry and fearful of being caught due to the lack of ransom payment, so they decided to release Kimberly. Upon entering the basement, they found her unconscious and assumed she was dead. To eliminate evidence in the hostage, they planned to get rid of her. During the investigation, officers learned from Liz Pace that Joshua used his roommate as an alibi, directing his accomplices while staying at home with his child. Liz Pace initially claimed she was unaware of Joshua's involvement in Kimberly's kidnapping. However, at the trial, she testified against him. She stated that after being interrogated, Joshua approached her and confessed to all his crimes. However, he then turned violent, physically assaulting her, silencing her, and issuing death threats before fleeing. Some time later, Joshua was apprehended by law enforcement. In an effort to further the investigation, the authorities decided to bring the former friends together, informing them that Joshua had denied any involvement in the massacre. Upon learning of Joshua's denial, Julio chose to cooperate with the investigation, revealing crucial information. This cooperation played a pivotal role in securing Torres' conviction for Kimberly's murder. Ultimately, the trio faced charges of murder, arson, kidnapping, and unlawful imprisonment. During the trial, evidence emerged that Joshua had made repeated attempts to deceive investigators and evade punishment. After deliberating for approximately 10 hours, the jury reached a verdict. Joshua Torres was sentenced to 58 years in prison. Nicholas Brett received the same sentence as the others. Julio Negrin was found guilty of being an accessory after the fact and was sentenced to 2 to 6 years in prison. Tomas Kimberly, the victim's family member, was satisfied with the court's verdict and did not want the perpetrators to receive the death penalty. In his opinion, the death penalty would have been too lenient a punishment. Nicholas Brett was repeatedly abused and assaulted in prison and died of AIDS after serving 2 years. Julio Negrin was released after serving his 2-year sentence. Joshua will not be eligible for release until 2053 at the earliest. Tragically, sadly, Kimberly's father, Kimberly, passed away from cancer in 2005. His family believes that the stress and grief caused by his daughter's death contributed to his illness. The life of Kimberly Antonakis, a beautiful young girl, was cut short in a shocking and devastating manner. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Susan Wright. Susan Lucille Wright was born on April 24, 1976, in Houston, Texas, to parents Velma Sue and Jimmy Lawrence Wright. She was the eldest of 2 children and had a biological sister named Cindy. As a child, Susan was active, sociable, and creatively talented. During her school years, she developed a passion for dancing and aspired to become a choreographer. With her bright and attractive appearance, as well as her slender figure, she drew many admirers and being the center of attention. After completing high school, Susan tried but was unsuccessful in getting into college. To raise funds for her future education, she decided to take some time off. During this period, she found work as a dancer at a well-known nightclub, performing partially nude on stage. She decided to leave her job and use her savings to enroll in evening courses at a nursing school. To support herself and maintain her independence, Susan took a job as a waitress at a restaurant while pursuing her studies. However, she soon discovered that medicine was not her real passion and had trouble paying for her studies. Consequently, she stopped attending her classes to concentrate on her job. In the summer of 1997, 21-year-old Susan met her future husband, Jeffrey Andrew Wright, at the Galveston restaurant where she worked. He was immediately drawn to her beauty and radiant smile, becoming a regular customer and leaving generous tips. After some time, Jeffrey mustered the courage to ask Susan for her phone number. He would call her daily, sometimes multiple times a day, to arrange romantic dates and surprise her with small gestures, such as sending flowers with heartfelt notes to her workplace. In the evenings, he would meet her and walk her home. The man was 8 years older than Susan, but she didn't consider this a significant issue. He was charming, attentive, and caring, which quickly won her over. However, it soon became apparent that Jeffrey struggled with alcohol and substance abuse. He claimed to have overcome his addiction to drugs and promised to quit drinking entirely. Susan, being young and in love for the first time, believed him. She thought that their love could conquer any obstacle. Shortly after, Susan discovered she was pregnant and excitedly shared the news with Jeffrey. Although he seemed pleased about becoming a father, he didn't take any decisive action, such as proposing or suggesting they move in together. Confused by Jeffrey's behavior, Susan took matters into her own hands. She insisted that their child should be born within a married family, and Jeffrey agreed to her terms. By the time they officially got married, Susan was already 8 months pregnant. They chose to have a quiet, intimate wedding without guests or celebrations, rather than a grand ceremony. Around this time, they purchased a home in a quiet area of Harris County, Texas, and moved in a couple of weeks before the birth of their child. In December 1998, they welcomed their first child, a son named Bradley, and appeared to be the perfect family. In 2001, Susan became pregnant again, and in the spring of 2002, she gave birth to a daughter named Kay. The family had a small dog named Buck, a comfortable family car. Jeffrey worked at a local construction company, and after the children were born, Susan became a stay-at-home mom by mutual agreement. She took care of the kids and created a cozy home environment. The neighbors said that Mrs. Susan was a kind person, friendly, sociable, a caring mother, and a loving wife. However, it was later revealed that the reality of their family life was far from perfect. Her husband was extremely demanding in every aspect of their lives. Susan's days were filled with cleaning, doing laundry, and cooking. Jeffrey demanded freshly cooked meals every day, prohibiting her from preparing meals in advance or reheating leftovers. Maintaining a perfect and clean home was a challenging task, especially with 2 small children. Additionally, Jeffrey required his clothes to be washed almost daily, as he refused to wear the same item twice. If Susan failed to meet these expectations, she faced insults, humiliation, and even physical abuse. Moreover, Jeffrey was extremely frugal, providing Susan with a meager weekly allowance of $100 to cover all household expenses, including cooking, childcare, and maintenance. Susan had to keep track of every expense, giving receipts to her husband Jeffrey. However, Jeffrey's behavior was a bigger issue. Despite promising to quit drinking, he continued and started using drugs, downplaying it as light doping for work stress. The substances made him aggressive, causing him to harm Susan and their son. Jeffrey denied his behavior was a problem, claiming Susan knew about his substance use before marriage. His parents sympathized with Susan but felt powerless to intervene. After moving in together, Jeffrey's behavior became increasingly aggressive, leading to physical, emotional, and intimate abuse. He initially apologized, but the violence became regular. Jeffrey would often go to the gym 3 times a week to practice boxing as a stress relief measure. He looked forward to sharing this activity with his son when the boy was older. On January 13, 2003, Jeffrey returned home from the gym agitated and on edge. As Susan prepared dinner, he attempted to teach their 5-year-old son some boxing moves but lost control and struck the child, causing the boy to burst into tears. Susan pretended not to notice the incident, but it was the last straw for her. Following dinner, she put the kids to bed. Meanwhile, Jeffrey stayed in the bedroom, where he continued to take drugs. There are different accounts of what happened next. According to Susan, when she went into the room, Jeffrey assaulted her, attempted to rape her, and tried to stab her with a knife. She claimed she fought back in self-defense after managing to take the knife from him. The events that followed are unclear, with different accounts of what happened. According to Susan, when she entered the bedroom, Jeffrey tried to attack her, sexually assault her, and kill her with a knife. However, she claims she managed to grab the knife and defended herself, leading to a fight. Her story changed multiple times, but the version told in court, based on the investigation, was considered more believable. Susan decided to use her dance skills to distract her husband and lower his guard. Wearing a short silk robe over her bare body, she put on a seductive show for Jeffrey. She then suggested a role-playing game that involved tying him up, which he agreed to. Using 3 of Jeffrey's neckties, she bound his hands and one leg to the bed. She used the silk belt from her robe to secure his other leg. With Jeffrey immobilized, Susan created a makeshift gag using her underwear, pretending it was part of the intimate game. To set the mood, she lit candles and turned off the lights. Jeffrey was tied to the bed with a gag in his mouth, unable to move or speak. The room was dimly lit. Jeffrey poured hot wax from a candle onto Jeffrey's chest, which was painful but initially seemed like part of a game they were playing. However, when she poured wax onto his genital area, the pain became unbearable. Jeffrey tried to free himself and scream, but he couldn't. His wife, Susan, took a small sharp knife from the kitchen and began stabbing him repeatedly, starting at his groin and moving up his body, slashing his genitals, legs, abdomen, chest, arms, neck, and face. She began slowly, expressing her grievances with each stab, recounting the insults, humiliations, and abuse she had suffered. As she continued, Susan began to cry and stab faster. Experts later counted 193 shallow knife wounds on Jeffrey's body. Most of these wounds were not fatal, and Jeffrey was conscious for most of the ordeal. Susan's actions suggested she was in a state of extreme emotional distress. Her lawyers argued that she was in a state of affect, unable to stop even when Jeffrey showed no signs of life. She had not considered what she would do next or how she would handle the body. Shallow grave in the backyard. She sat next to her husband's body on the floor for hours. Eventually, she looked around the blood-covered bedroom and knew she had to act before dawn. She carefully checked outside through the window, ensuring the coast was clear. Her gaze landed on a shallow pit in the backyard that Jeffrey had dug for a fountain over the weekend. A plan formed instantly. This pit would become her despised husband's grave. To move the body, Susan used a garden wheelbarrow. This raised questions for investigators, as a petite woman was able to single-handedly lift and transport a man twice her weight out of the house. Suspicions of an accomplice arose but were never confirmed. Under the cover of darkness, Susan discreetly relocated the body to the pit and covered it with a thin layer of soil. She then cleaned up, removing the blood-stained curtains and bed linen, placing them in trash bags and dispersing them in different bins. The blood-soaked mattress was flipped over, as Susan was unsure how to properly clean it. She spent the remaining time until dawn scrubbing blood from the floor, walls, and carpet. Scrubbing the carpet is a big deal, with a large stain that couldn't be removed. In an attempt to eliminate any evidence of the violent confrontation, Susan applied bleach to the affected area, hoping the chemicals would destroy any remaining traces. Susan made a distressing call to her husband's parents in Austin, Texas. She was emotional as she recounted the events. Her husband, under the influence, had physically assaulted her and their son, spilled bleach on the carpet, and then ended their relationship before leaving. Jeffrey's parents were shocked and concerned by the news. Although they were aware that their son had his flaws, they felt genuine sympathy for their daughter-in-law. However, when they learned that he had hit their grandchild, they immediately offered for Susan and the children to come and stay with them. Despite their willingness to help, the young mother declined their offer. She added that she planned to file a police report and reveal all the incidents that had occurred at their residence. 2 days later, Susan visited the police station as her husband's sudden disappearance raised increasing concerns and action was necessary. Susan reported that she and her children had been victims of domestic violence perpetrated by her husband and required protection. She successfully obtained a restraining order against her husband, preventing him from approaching her and the children, although she was already aware that he would never be able to come near them again. As evidence, Susan presented bruises and cuts on her arms, which she alleged were inflicted by her husband using keys when she attempted to defend herself. Additionally, Susan had a small bruise on his face and corroborated that his father had struck him. At first, the tearful woman's story seemed believable and logical. She claimed her husband, under the influence of alcohol and substances, had attacked her and their young son. Then, realizing what he had done, he became scared and fled. However, over time, suspicions grew because Jeffrey had not contacted anyone. He appeared to have run away without his belongings, documents, or mobile phone. He didn't show up for work or visit his parents, and none of his friends or neighbors had seen him. It was as if he had vanished. Susan found it unbearable to stay in the house where she confronted her husband. She couldn't shake the feeling he was still alive and would rise for revenge. She was losing her grip on reality. Even their dog Buck sensed it, constantly barking and trying to dig up the yard where Jeffrey was buried. On January 17th, Susan went to her mother's house with her children. When her mother saw her daughter in person, she fully realized the severity of the situation. Even though she had already been aware of it, Velma directly asked if she had killed her husband, and her daughter broke down in tears, nodding in admission. The daughter then confessed to the crime, revealing the location of her husband's body, and repeatedly expressed uncertainty about what to do next. Following her mother's advice, Susan reached out to lawyer Neil Davis the next day and confessed to killing her husband and attempting to cover up the crime. After gathering all the details, the experienced defense attorney considered possible scenarios and contacted the Harris County District Attorney's Office on January 19th. Davis reported Susan's confession, including the burial of her husband's body in their backyard, and stated that she was willing to provide a full statement at the police station. On January 24, 2003, Susan voluntarily went to the police station, intent on making a full confession. However, her account was disjointed, with confusing details and occasional contradictions. She sometimes referred to her late husband as if he were still alive, expressed fear of him, and requested protection. Consequently, Susan underwent a psychiatric evaluation. The results revealed she had suffered a nervous breakdown and was experiencing depression. Despite this, the evaluation found that Susan was still capable of understanding the actions she had taken. When investigators uncovered the remains of Jeffrey from the makeshift grave in the backyard, they were shocked by the brutality of the scene, having never encountered. Experts counted a total of 193 knife wounds on the victim's body, distributed across various areas, including the groin, legs, shoulders, arms, abdominal area, chest, neck, and face. The majority of these wounds were superficial, meaning they were not life-threatening on their own. However, one head wound was severe enough to have caused death. The large number of superficial wounds suggests that the victim endured a prolonged and agonizing death, likely while still conscious, as his wife repeatedly stabbed him with a small knife. The victim's wrists and ankles showed deep marks from the ties and belt used to bind him. These injuries indicated that the victim had attempted to free himself but was unsuccessful. The ties and belt were still on the body when it was found. Additionally, there were traces of candle wax on the victim's chest and groin area. Susan claimed that the candle wax was an accident, resulting from her husband knocking over a lit candle. However, the prosecution argued that the hot wax was more likely used as a form of torture to inflict suffering on the bound victim. Furthermore, the victim's mouth contained his wife's underwear, which acted as a gag to prevent him from screaming or calling for help. Toxicological tests showed the deceased had alcohol and several controlled substances in his system, which could have led to aggressive and irrational behavior. Initially, the bedroom where the confrontation occurred seemed normal, except for a large bleach stain on the carpet. However, upon closer inspection using special chemical agents and equipment, it became clear that Susan had spent considerable time cleaning up the scene. Once wiped away blood traces were revealed, the true extent of the violence became apparent. Blood was found throughout the room, including on the ceiling, and the mattress was saturated with it. The trial began in late February 2004, with Susan having already spent a year in custody. Her children were being cared for by her parents and sister Cindy. Her lawyer was well prepared, having worked extensively with Susan to build her case. During the trial, Susan frequently broke down in tears as she recounted the events of that horrific night and the abuse she suffered leading up to it. She claimed to have endured years of cruelty and violence at the hands of her husband. The defendant, Susan, claimed that on the evening of the incident, her husband returned home from training in an agitated state. He began demonstrating boxing techniques to their 5-year-old son, Bradley, and said the boy would also take up boxing. When Bradley refused, his father hit him in the face. Susan put the children to bed and then tried to have a serious talk with her husband, urging him to seek help at a clinic. However, he became angry, grabbed his keys, and tried to leave. Susan attempted to stop him, which led to a struggle that caused injuries to her palms and wrists. According to Susan, her husband then struck her, causing her to fall and momentarily lose her bearings. After regaining composure, Susan saw her husband Jeffrey holding a knife, but her testimony became inconsistent. Her lawyer argued she was in a state of affect, leading her to seize the knife and strike Jeffrey. Susan claimed she secured him to a cart with ties and a belt after the confrontation, and candle wax accidentally landed on his body. However, the defendant had no explanation for why her underwear was found in the victim's mouth. In contrast, the prosecution presented a more convincing and logical case. Expert testimony revealed that the victim's wrist and ankle wounds were inflicted before death, likely as part of a ruse to restrain the victim. This also provided a plausible explanation for the gag in the victim's mouth. Additionally, the angle of the injuries suggested that the perpetrator was positioned on top of the victim, rather than struggling with him, which would have resulted in different injury patterns. All the cuts on the victim were inflicted from the front, indicating that the attack occurred while he was lying on his back, unable to move. It was unclear whether Susan had planned her husband's murder in advance and intentionally used the pit he dug for a fountain as a makeshift grave. Prosecutors, however, suspected that she had carefully orchestrated the crime, motivated by the potential insurance payout. The case drew widespread media attention, with Susan being labeled the blue-eyed butcher or blonde meat grinder by the press. Jeffrey's family demanded the harshest possible sentence, while many of their neighbors felt sorry for Susan, recalling instances where she had bruises that she attributed to her own clumsiness, but which may have been signs of physical abuse. Prosecutors initially sought a life sentence for Susan, but later reduced their request to 45 years in prison. In March 2004, she was found guilty and sentenced to 25 years. She showed no emotion when the judge delivered the verdict, appearing detached from the proceedings. A year later, her lawyer's attempt to appeal the decision was rejected. In 2008, Susan and her defense team filed another appeal, which was influenced by new testimony from a previously unknown witness. Misty McKell, wife of former NFL champion Steve McKell, was a key witness. She had a lengthy relationship with Jeffrey Wright in the mid-1990s and was briefly engaged to him. However, she suffered physical abuse, humiliation, and cruel treatment from Jeffrey, leading her to end the engagement and cut ties. Following this new information in Jeffrey's testimony, Susan's prison sentence was reduced to 20 years. She became eligible for parole in 2014 at age 38 but was denied. A second denial followed in July 2017. After 16 years in prison, Susan Wright was released in the winter of 2020 at age 44. She was met by reporters and photographers, causing her to break down in tears and ask to be left alone. Her trial received extensive media coverage, including a broadcast on Court TV. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you, the case of Channin Starbuck. Channin Starbuck, a 42-year-old woman, was born on April 19, 1969, in Anderson, Indiana, as the youngest child with two older brothers. Her parents eventually divorced and started new families, resulting in additional siblings for Channin. On December 3, 2011, Channin was discovered on the floor of her bedroom, positioned in a suggestive manner. An erotic massager was placed on her stomach, indicating a clear attempt to humiliate her after death. The police immediately suspected foul play due to the numerous bruises and scrapes on her body. A medical examiner later confirmed that some of the injuries were caused by a stun gun, and evidence suggested that her body had been moved. The official cause of death was determined to be strangulation. The detectives assigned to solve the case faced a difficult task. They needed to reconstruct the final hours of Channin's life and identify the perpetrator. Channin, a mother of 5, had been reported missing by her ex-husband, Clay Starbuck, a day before her body was found. Clay, 47, had alerted the authorities that he had been unable to contact Channin since December 1 at approximately 3 p.m. Channin sent a text to her daughter, saying she couldn't pick up the kids from school because she wasn't feeling well. She asked them to wait for their father, claiming she had already informed him of the change in plans. However, his phone was turned off, so he didn't know what was going on. The younger siblings, Marshall and Serena, were tired and hungry, so 15-year-old Logan decided to call her older brother Austin for help. She asked him to drive them to their father's house, which was just a couple of blocks away. When they arrived, Austin said he couldn't reach their mother either. He thought maybe she had turned off her phone to rest. Austin put the kids in the car and drove them to their father's house. Clay was surprised to see them but was happy to spend time with his kids. Since the older kids had lived with him after the divorce, and the younger ones had stayed with their mother, Clay decided to enjoy the unexpected visit and didn't contact Channin. This wasn't the first time something like this had happened with her. Clay expected to see Channin at the school basketball game that evening, but she didn't show up. The next day, December 2nd, Clay took the kids to school and then went to Channin's house. The front door was locked, and the blinds were closed. Since he didn't have a spare key, he couldn't get in. Clay sent a message saying that if Channin didn't show up by 7 p.m., he would contact the police. After waiting until the agreed time, Clay went to the police station to report Channin Starbuck's disappearance. 2 sheriff's deputies visited her address but found nothing suspicious, so they returned to the station. The officer told Clay to wait one more day. If he still hadn't heard from Channin after that, he should return to the station. The next day, Clay returned to the police station, and it was then that he discovered he wasn't the only one looking for Channin. A friend and her mother had also reported being unable to contact her, which was unusual for Channin. This new information prompted the police to take the case more seriously. It had been 48 hours since Channin's disappearance, and several people were worried about her. The police visited Channin's home again. Upon entering the residence, they found no signs of forced entry or robbery. Initially, everything appeared to be in order. However, when they entered Channon's bedroom, they discovered the disturbing truth. Channon's Starbucks disappearance was a result of a brutal murder. In her room, investigators found an unmade bed with a blanket nearby, but the sheet was missing and the mattress cover had red stains. Her cell phone and diary were on the dresser. Forensic experts examined the room for fingerprints, finding 12 latent prints on the massager box and bathroom mirror, while some surfaces had been wiped clean. DNA analysis was conducted on traces found in common areas, and specialists took scrapings from under Channon's nails, face, and neck. Detectives believed the murder occurred after Channon got out of the shower, and her body was moved to the bed and then the floor. The missing sheet was found in a washing machine, suggesting the perpetrator tried to eliminate evidence. Clay arrived at Channon's house by noon to find out what had happened to his ex-wife. However, the scene at her yard was ominous, with yellow tape cordoning off the area, an ambulance, and several police cars parked near the lawn. Clay was the first to be informed of the tragic event. To gather more information about Channon and her lifestyle, the detectives questioned Clay after he had calmed down. He explained that he and his ex-wife had a morning routine where he would take the younger kids to school and she would pick them up afterwards. However, on December 1st, his car broke down a few blocks from home, disrupting their routine. Clay had texted Channon to ask her to take the kids to school. It was supposed to warm up around 11 a.m., but when he tried to start the car again, it still wouldn't start. He gave up and went back inside to take a nap. Clay slept for several hours without being disturbed, during which time his cell phone ran out of battery. To support his story, he showed the police his correspondence with his ex-wife, Channon. Initially, everything seemed to add up. Clay was cooperative, providing his cell phone, DNA, and fingerprints. He also expressed concern for Channon, explaining that their divorce had made her more vulnerable. When asked for more information, Clay revealed that Channon had joined a dating site after becoming single. As an attractive woman, she had many admirers. According to Clay, she might have been seeing multiple people at the same time, and one of them might have been responsible for her death. Unfortunately, he didn't have any specific names to share. During the conversation, Clay became emotional and cried, struggling to accept Channon's death. After recording his statement, the police sent him home. He had to break the news of their mother's death to their children. At the start of the investigation, the case surrounding Channon's Starbucks demise was gathering momentum. Investigators questioned the Channon family's neighbors, focusing on every detail, especially reports of unfamiliar people and vehicles in recent weeks. An autopsy revealed severe injuries, including chest trauma consistent with the use of a stun gun, 10 broken ribs, and head and body injuries likely caused by a blunt object. The severity of the injuries made it difficult to determine the exact time of death, but the expert estimated that Channon's life ended between December 1st and 2. Scratches on her body suggested that she had been moved, and her broken neck bone supported this theory. The medical examiner found evidence of strangulation using a soft object, possibly a hand, towel, or sheet. A breakthrough in the case came from the analysis of body samples, which revealed male DNA. This suggested that the suspect might be one of Channon's close male acquaintances, including her ex-husband or secret admirers. Clay Starbuck, her ex-husband, has cooperated fully with the investigation, including undergoing a medical examination to check for any injuries or harm. Detectives suspected that the perpetrator might have been injured during the struggle, but Clay showed no signs of injury on his hands. The investigators then examined their sons, 21-year-old Austin and 18-year-old Blake. The only issue that arose was the presence of old cuts on the older son's hands, but these were explained by his job at a window manufacturing plant. During conversations with the sons, some facts were established that would later become clearer. The children knew that after the divorce, their mother had been dating and they disapproved of it. They had seen explicit photos on their mother's laptop, leading them to wonder if she might have been targeted by an online predator. It was clear that the sons loved their mother and were deeply shaken by her death. However, they had disagreed with the changes she had been making in her life. In a subsequent interview, Clay expressed himself more clearly. He blamed Shannon's behavior for his family's problems while he was away on business, especially her frequent encounters with other men. Clay even suspected that Marshall might not be his biological son, but he loved him regardless. Clay believed that after their relationship ended, Shannon started to indulge excessively and not appropriately for her age. He disapproved of her dropping off the kids at his place when she went on dates. By this point, investigators had not only spoken to Clay and the children but also interviewed Shannon's relatives and friends. The detectives developed a more comprehensive understanding of the deceased and her family. Shannon had always dreamed of having a big, loving family. Growing up, she was a kind and modest person who loved to draw and was very good at it, winning many awards. At 20, she met 25-year-old Clay Starbuck in Florida, where she had moved with her family when she was young. Clay was on vacation from Alaska. They were introduced by friends at a party and hit it off right away. That night, Shannon learned a lot about Clay. He had gone to school in Colorado to learn about diesel mechanics and later worked on the Trans-Alaskan Pipeline, which paid well. However, he was already married with 2 kids. Despite his complicated past, Shannon wasn't discouraged. She actually saw it as a plus, thinking it gave him valuable experience for their future together. Shannon and Clay got married soon after meeting. As Clay's new wife, she moved in with her husband. At first, she struggled to adjust to her new surroundings and the weather, but she quickly settled in. Shannon's married life wasn't as perfect as she had envisioned. Her husband Clay was often away, leaving her to manage the household by herself. However, her love for him gave her the strength to carry on, knowing that his work shifts would eventually end and he would return to her. In the meantime, she took on the role of mother to his children from his previous marriage and soon gave birth to their own son, Austin, followed by another son, Blake, 3 years later. In 1996, they welcomed a daughter, Logan, who was later diagnosed with autism spectrum disorder. Shannon accepted her daughter's diagnosis with love and care, becoming her closest companion. The family was later completed with the arrival of another daughter, Serena. Shannon devoted herself to her children's well-being, education, and spiritual growth. She was also known for her cooking, crafts, and other hobbies within their community. However, she was so focused on being a caring mother and a loving wife that she didn't realize her husband was having an affair at work. When she discovered his affair, she felt deeply betrayed and shocked. This led her to file for divorce in 2000, marking the beginning of a new chapter in her life. She still had feelings for her ex-husband, so she moved to Arizona to start fresh and ease the pain of their separation. There, she attempted to start a new relationship, but it didn't work out because she realized she still loved her ex, Clay. Clay was also reaching out to her and asking her to come back, claiming he had changed. Believing him, she gave him another chance. In 2001, they had a son named Marshall, their 5th child. However, instead of strengthening their relationship, Marshall's birth created new tensions. Even when they formally remarried in 2006, their relationship remained strained. 6 months later, the family moved to Deer Park, Washington. Clay's work kept him away, leaving Shannon to care for the children and manage the household. She kept her family entertained by organizing outings and parties at home. However, the frequent time spent apart put a strain on her marriage, creating doubts and mistrust that eventually led to a permanent separation in 2010. Crossing into her 40s, Shannon started to rebuild her life with the hope of finding love again. She was determined not to give up or make the same mistakes as before. Even when her ex-husband Clay suffered a serious injury, Channon chose not to go back to him. However, she still provided him with support and help. In February 2011, Clay quit his job and moved to Deer Park to be closer to his children in Channon. Although he hoped Channon would take him back, she didn't feel the same way. She had finally found freedom and was enjoying it. After Clay's surgery, Austin and Blake moved in with him, enjoying more independence from their mother. Channon started a new chapter, finding a part-time job and enrolling in a dental assistant course to support her family since Clay stopped paying child support due to illness. The children stayed with Clay on Wednesdays and every other weekend. By summer's end, Channon completed her certification and was ready for her next goal. Channon Starbuck had been seeking a fresh start, creating a dating profile in hopes of meeting someone special and leaving her past heartache behind. She regretted spending her best years with a man who didn't appreciate her and was capable of deceit. Tragically, her dreams were cut short one December morning when she became Channon of a heinous crime. Her funeral, held on December 10, 2011, was attended by a large number of people, a testament to her bright and sincere personality. She was laid to rest at a cemetery in Orlando. The investigation into her death was swift, thanks to public attention. Detectives focused on her ex-husband Clay, verifying his alibi for December 1st. His fingerprints didn't match those at the crime scene, so they checked his story against databases and examined Channon's phone, laptop, and diary for other potential suspects. Detectives thoroughly examined Channon's mobile phone, leading them to add several individuals to the list of suspects. These men had been in contact with her through a dating site, raising suspicions about their potential involvement. One suspect, Tom Walker, had arranged a date with Channon for December 5th, just hours before her death. Their conversations had been candid, and they had exchanged photos. However, when Tom Walker requested that Channon take a photo using an adult toy, she declined. Notably, her body was later discovered in the exact pose that Tom Walker had mentioned. Within an hour, detectives located Tom Walker, who was shocked not only by the news of Channon's death but also by being considered a suspect. He promptly provided an explanation for his activities on the day of her death, which was corroborated by his colleagues and surveillance footage. The next individual on the list was John Wilson, who had scheduled a meeting with Channon on December 1st. An examination of their correspondence revealed. The investigation revealed that the suitor, whose real name was John Kinlawn, had no intention of a serious relationship with Channon and had used a fake identity. He was married and worked in a different field than he claimed, which explained his secretive behavior. When questioned, Kinlawn had an alibi for the time of the crime, which was corroborated, and he was released after providing a DNA sample. The investigation was back to square one, but a breakthrough came when detectives examined Channon's mobile phone. They discovered that a 911 call had been made from the phone on the morning of December 1st, but it had been deleted from the call log. After retrieving the call, they found it contained only the sounds of sobbing and rustling before abruptly ending. Channon's phone records revealed a failed call and 11 messages sent after her death. GPS data confirmed her phone was at home, where she was killed after dropping her kids at school. The suspect tried to mislead the investigation and was found to be close to the Channon family, even using a nickname for the youngest son. After uncovering this information, Clay's statements were examined more closely. He had a clear motive for killing his ex-wife, as divorce can be difficult for some partners to accept. Additionally, he had the perfect opportunity, knowing her daily routine. As a result, authorities decided to track the suspect's car route again, this time using footage from street surveillance cameras. This is when the officers' suspicions became clearer. It turned out that Clay's car had not broken down. At the same time, results from another analysis arrived, showing that DNA material collected from Channon's body matched the suspect's samples exactly. When Channon returned home, a heated argument broke out, which ultimately led to her death. The unusual position of her body was a deliberate act of vengeance by Clay, who was enraged by her newfound freedom. After the murder, Clay stayed in the house and impersonated Channon in text messages. It became clear that his intentions to harm her may have been long-standing. A friend's conversation with detectives took on new significance, revealing that Clay and Channon's relationship was troubled. Channon had confided in friends that she was tired of Clay's controlling behavior and criticism, and had feared he might harm her if she ever left him. In fact, Channon had contacted the police multiple times between June and November 2011, reporting that Clay was stalking her and making her feel unsafe in her own home. She had become so fearful that she refused to give anyone a spare key to her house. Ultimately, Channon secured a restraining order against Clay, limiting their communication to text messages. A thorough examination of her diary revealed that she not only feared her former lover but also believed he was manipulating their children against her. Clay had been spreading vicious rumors and portraying her as promiscuous. As a result, when he was arrested on February 6, 2012, the children refused to believe he was involved. The discovery of a tracking program on Channon's laptop, a hard drive labeled Channon's desktop computer, in Clay's house, and printed correspondences did not seem to disturb them. The older children questioned the authenticity of the DNA analysis, thinking the accusations against their father were unbelievable and the case was fabricated. However, law enforcement and other relatives had a different perspective. At the trial, the prosecution presented a substantial amount of physical evidence and testimonies, confidently demonstrating Clay's guilt. In June 2013, justice was served when Clay Starbuck was found guilty of first-degree deprivation of life under aggravating circumstances and disrespect to human remains. He was sentenced to life without parole. His 2015 appeal was denied. He's serving time in Spokane County. Channon's family grieves her loss, but the children siding with their father hurts more. His obsession led to revenge, leaving the children without a mother or father. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you, the case of Nadine Lott. Nadine Lott was born in the late 1980s in Arlo, a town on Ireland's southeastern coast. She was the eldest child of Claire and David Lott. She has 3 younger siblings, Phoebe, Tanith, and Kayla. By the summer of 2012, Nadine, 26 years old, had grown into a charismatic woman. She was eagerly planning a trip to Australia, looking forward to a vacation filled with exciting experiences, sports, and new friendships. Nadine stood out from her peers with her bright smile and charming personality, which drew people to her. She had a large social circle and could easily connect with anyone. However, beneath her outgoing exterior, Nadine was a sensitive and vulnerable person who always tried to see the best in others. She cherished her family, who had loved and supported her throughout her childhood. Nadine discovered a passion for photography, capturing life's fleeting moments to preserve the world's beauty. This hobby eventually turned into a career, and she became a successful beautician, helping others enhance their natural beauty. Nadine experienced some difficulties in her personal life. She wasn't eager to settle into a serious relationship, preferring to enjoy her independence and spend time with friends. This desire for freedom led her to take a trip to Australia, where she was attracted by the warm climate, stunning beaches, and exotic landscapes, finding everything fresh and romantic. Nadine met Daniel Murtaugh in Australia, and it was as if they were polar opposites. While Nadine was outgoing and lively, Daniel was quiet and reserved, with piercing eyes and a toned physique that immediately caught her attention. Despite their differences, they felt an instant and inexplicable connection, sharing common interests and a deep sense of intimacy. As they spent more time together, their days were filled with unforgettable experiences and memories. They strolled along stunning beaches, explored the crystal-clear waters, and shared their deepest dreams and secrets. Nadine was captivated by Daniel's surfing skills, and he was drawn to her carefree spirit, genuine nature, and infectious laughter. Their connection grew stronger with each passing day, unencumbered by any barriers or reservations. Daniel, a few years Nadine's senior, hailed from Dayan, a suburb of Dublin, where he worked as a window fitter and lived with his family. Nadine viewed it as a casual fling without any serious commitments. Phoebe was the first to discover Daniel. Shortly after, Claire, the mother, learned about the relationship from her child. Claire quickly suspected that this relationship may not be long-lasting. Nadine's life changed dramatically when she found out she was pregnant with Daniel's baby. A few months later, Daniel attempted to rekindle their relationship and start a family, but it ultimately didn't work out. In November 2013, Nadine gave birth to a baby girl named Kia, but Daniel was noticeably absent during this significant moment. Instead, her sister Phoebe was the one who offered emotional support and remained a constant companion. Phoebe was by Nadine's side during childbirth, took the first photo of mother and daughter, and played a vital role in helping Nadine navigate the challenges of new motherhood. Nadine's pregnancy marked a turning point in her life, as she transitioned into her new role as a mother. Despite the difficulties she faced, Nadine found solace in Phoebe's unwavering support and love. Nadine's story is a poignant reminder of the complexities of love and relationships. Although her relationship with Daniel was unfulfilling and lacked deep emotional connection, Nadine was determined to provide a stable and loving environment for her daughter. But Daniel failed to take responsibility for his actions and showed no interest in being a devoted father, leaving Nadine to raise Kia on her own. Nadine had always tried to provide the best life for her daughter, Kia. In 2016, she wanted to build a home with her loved ones, so she rented a house where everyone could live together as a family. However, her hopes were crushed when Daniel, Kia's father, failed to move in with them. This realization marked the end of Nadine's. Daniel's constant absence and broken promises had left her emotionally drained, so she made the decision to end their relationship and start a new chapter in her life. Despite their separation, Nadine had held on to the hope that Kia would still be able to maintain a relationship with her father. Claire, Nadine's mother, had a more realistic view of Daniel's. His love for boxing was a higher priority for him than his family. In contrast, Nadine remained devoted to her daughter Kia, providing her with the love, care, and support she required. As Kia grew up without her father, she had her mother as a role model, teaching her to persevere through challenges. In October 2019, Claire suggested that Nadine celebrate her birthday in Rome. During the trip, Nadine's daughter, Kia, also referred to as Nine, confided in her mother about the struggles she was facing in her life. Nadine had moved on from her relationship with Daniel and was thriving as a single mother. She enjoyed her job, took pride in her accomplishments, and was happy with her life. Her future looked promising, especially after being offered a modeling job. Her happiness was short-lived when she discovered that Daniel continued to make unfulfilled promises to visit their daughter Kia in Ireland. When Daniel requested a meeting to give Nadine money for Kia, she was skeptical, suspecting that he just wanted to see her, not their daughter. She agreed to his request, but only because she didn't want Kia to think poorly of him. Nadine still held on to the hope of creating a real family, despite the increasing impossibility of it. To shield Kia from disappointment and pain, Nadine made excuses for her father's absence. She wanted to protect her daughter from Daniel's irresponsibility and neglect. Meanwhile, Daniel was reluctant to let Nadine go and was fearful that she might start dating other men. As a result, Nadine felt forced to keep her personal life hidden from him to avoid his controlling behavior and threats. In 2019, Nadine Lott's life drastically changed after she ended her relationship with her partner, Daniel. She started dating a new partner from Turkey, but her attempts to keep this relationship private were unsuccessful. Daniel discovered Nadine's new partner and became furious, sparking a series of stalking incidents that caused her immense distress. On December 5th, Nadine sent a clear message to Daniel, stating that their relationship was over and demanding that he stop harassing her. She believed this would finally bring an end to the toxic relationship. However, on December 13th, Nadine asked Daniel to watch their child, Kia, while she attended her aunt's birthday celebration at a local pub. Daniel agreed to watch Kia at his home in Kondan, a different location from where Nadine lived, which was in Wicklow. On the night of December 14th, Daniel repeatedly tried to contact Nadine, calling her at 5:57 and 1:26 a.m., but she didn't answer. He eventually sent her a message, asking her to return home soon. Nadine returned home and changed her clothes, but the events that followed are unclear. What is known is that Daniel attacked Nadine, terrifying her 6-year-old daughter, Kia. The noise and screams caught the attention of a neighbor, Ela Klanovich, who investigated the source of the commotion. Ela saw Nadine lying on the floor in her hallway with Daniel standing over her, his face contorted with rage and panic. Horrified, Ela retreated to her apartment and quickly contacted Nadine's family. When Claire, mother of Nadine's, heard Ela's story, she felt overwhelmed with fear and anxiety. Daniel fled the scene in his Volvo, leaving behind a trail of dust and blood. When Claire rushed into Nadine's apartment, she was met with a disturbing sight. The walls and broken glass were covered in blood splatters, reflecting the horrific events that had unfolded. But the situation was far from over. It was now 9:50 a.m. Claire, Phoebe, and Kyle walked into the kitchen and were shocked by what they saw. Nadine's body was lying on the floor, brutally mutilated and showing no signs of life. Meanwhile, about 20 miles away in the town of Lar, Daniel lost control of his car and crashed into a ditch. Miraculously, he escaped with only minor scratches. John Beck-Ken stumbled upon the wreckage and was shocked by the scene: a car with broken headlights, shattered glass, and a lone vehicle lying in a ditch. His initial thought was that the driver had been drinking after a Christmas party, but as he approached the car, he was surprised to find it empty. Suddenly, Daniel emerged from the fog, his eyes vacant, his body shaking, and his clothes covered in blood. Daniel confessed to the crime in a despairing tone to a witness. He was then taken to the hospital in an ambulance, repeatedly muttering that he loved Nadine, as if seeking forgiveness. Meanwhile, Nadine's apartment was in disarray. When paramedics and police officers arrived, they were met with a strong smell of blood. The walls and furniture were smeared with it, and the scene was chaotic. Paramedic Ian Clark was struck by the extent of the destruction. Broken dishes, shattered glass, and bloody footprints indicated that a violent crime had occurred. Phoebe and Kyle rushed Nadine to urgent care after a severe accident, where medical professionals were able to save her life despite her critical injuries, which had left her unconscious. Nadine was rushed to St. Vincent's Hospital, where she was admitted to the intensive care unit. Doctors documented severe injuries to her head, neck, and chest at 10:58 a.m. Her condition was critical, with 64 injuries found on her body, the cause of which was unclear. Nadine received multiple blood transfusions, but her condition remained critical. Claire hoped that Nadine would recover. Claire stayed by her daughter Nadine's side in the hospital, bringing comfort with familiar items from home like family photos, Nadine's favorite perfumes, and cherished toys. Despite the doctor's bleak outlook, Claire was resolute in her support, believing that her love and care would help Nadine navigate the challenging road to recovery. Meanwhile, Daniel was scheduled to appear in court on December 16th. The court decided to hold him in custody until his trial. On the same day, Claire accompanied Nadine to a follow-up examination to assess the damage to her brain. Claire prayed that Nadine would find the strength to pull through. Tragically, Nadine's injuries were too severe, and she passed away on December 17th, between 3 o'clock and 4 p.m., without ever regaining consciousness. Irish Police Colonel Dean McCarthy described the violent crime as one of the most brutal he had ever witnessed. After the murder, Chief State Pathologist Dr. Linda Mogan performed the autopsy at the city funeral home on December 18th. Following the autopsy, the victim's loved ones, particularly her family, were left with many unanswered questions. Clea was consumed by her thoughts, trying to make sense of the events that had transpired. The next day, the killer, Daniel, confessed to the heinous crime, describing how he attacked and brutally murdered Nadine. According to Daniel's account, he started by grabbing Nadine, hitting her on the head, and then repeatedly punching her with his fists. Despite her efforts to resist, Daniel continued the assault, kicking her and eventually stabbing and strangling her with a charger cord. Kia, a witness to the horrific attack, pleaded with her father to stop the assault, but her cries were ignored. Despite Nadine's desperate attempts to fight back, Daniel had remarkable physical strength and was impossible to defeat. A funeral service for Nadine was held on December 22nd at St. Mary and Peter's Church in Arlo, her hometown. The ceremony drew over 1,000 mourners, and hundreds more watched the live broadcast as they gathered to bid their final farewells. 6 people carefully carried the coffin containing Nadine, a young and beautiful girl, as if she were asleep in eternal rest. The altar was surrounded by scarlet velvet roses. Nadine's mother, Claire, sat in the front row, struggling to hold back tears as she gazed at her daughter's coffin. Her eyes shone with love and admiration for she who lay before her. Family and friends gathered nearby, overcome with grief, as they clutched handkerchiefs to their faces and openly wept. David Lott, Nadine's father, stepped forward, his voice shaking with sorrow, and tearfully placed one of Nadine's elegant handbags beside the coffin. Nadine had a remarkable ability to turn anything into a stunning fashion accessory that perfectly matched her one-of-a-kind style. Next, Kyle, a close family friend, approached the altar, holding a photograph of Nadine and Kia, beaming with happiness as they hugged each other. Kia, confused and grief-stricken, clung to her mother's side, unable to comprehend the loss she had suffered. Phoebe, Nadine's sister, brought a pair of shoes to the altar, the very ones Nadine had been planning to wear to her prom. Overwhelmed with emotion, Phoebe struggled to hold back her tears. Tanith, another close friend, carefully placed a photo album on the altar, filled with cherished memories of Nadine's carefree days, joyful parties, and radiant smile. These memories would remain with them forever, a poignant reminder of the happy times they had shared with Nadine. With genuine empathy on his face, Priest Michael Moore led the ceremony with heartfelt words of eternal life and hope that soothed the grieving family and friends. Looking directly at Kia, he voiced gratitude for the immense joy she had brought Nadine during her life, wishing that Kia's own life ahead be one rich with care, protection, and enduring love. He reassured Kia that her mother's loved ones would always be there to protect her from harm, serving as her guardian angels. Nadine's sisters, Phoebe and Tanith, tearfully bid their final farewell, overcome with grief at the loss of their beloved sister. The ceremony concluded with the playing of funeral music, after which Nadine's coffin was laid to rest in the San Gabriel Cemetery. As her loved ones said their final goodbyes, they took comfort in knowing that Nadine's soul was at peace. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you, the case of Marie Carlson. In 1974, a baby girl named Marie was born in the Philippines to an ordinary family. Concerned about her daughter's future, Marie's mother made the difficult decision to send her to the United States, where she believed Marie would have better opportunities for success. As a result, Marie was placed in a foster family with a military background, where she met a young girl named Esther, who was the same age as her. 2 young girls quickly became close friends, unaware of a surprising fact that linked them together. What Marie didn't know was that her American foster father was actually her biological parent, making Esther her biological sister. As they grew older, the sisters left their parents' house and decided to start a new life together. They chose to settle in Florida, where they rented a cozy apartment near a karaoke club that soon became their favorite hangout spot. Marie Carlson's life was a vibrant reflection of her favorite color, pink. She had always believed that living a beautiful life was essential, surrounding herself with flowers and lovely things. But everything changed when she met Jeff, and she discovered a new, profound meaning in life: love. They quickly fell for each other, got married, and had a daughter named Paris, a name that symbolized the love and beauty they shared. Despite their happy family life, Jeff remained an enigma. His past and last name were shrouded in mystery. Meanwhile, Marie was driven to succeed in her career. She had set her sights on joining the Federal Bureau of Investigation, FBI, and was studying criminal law to achieve her goal. However, her journey was not without its challenges. As she progressed in her career, the obstacles grew tougher, and despite her best efforts, Marie ultimately left the police service without realizing her dream. Marie's life took a devastating turn due to a mental health disorder that worsened over time. The trauma of being sexually abused as a child left her with deep emotional scars. As a result, her daily life became increasingly painful, and her relationship with her husband, Jeff, began to suffer. The love they once shared started to fade, and their marriage eventually ended in divorce. The divorce was a difficult but necessary decision, as both Marie and Jeff knew they needed to prioritize their daughter, Paris. They agreed that it would be best for Paris to live with Jeff, allowing her to escape the negativity that had been affecting their home. Despite the challenges, they completed the necessary paperwork amicably and with minimal drama. Throughout the long and difficult divorce process, Marie and Jeff remained dedicated to making decisions that would benefit and care for their daughter, Paris. They remained on good terms and continued to care for each other as friends. Marie was grateful for Jeff's support and made it a priority to spend quality time with Paris, never missing a birthday. Marie had faced many challenges, but she remained determined and refused to surrender. Despite her struggles, she never lost hope. One day, she discovered what had been missing in her life: faith. This newfound faith led her to the Emerald Coast Church, founded by the charismatic pastor James Flanders and his wife Tanya. From the moment she stepped into the church, Marie felt a sense of belonging. The warm and welcoming atmosphere, combined with Pastor James Flanders' sincere and heartfelt sermons, made her feel at home. Marie began the process of recovering and healing from her past experiences, working to make amends and move forward. The Flanders, known for their kindness and generosity, had created a sanctuary where people could find help and support. For Marie, the church became more than just a place of worship. It was a loving community that accepted her with open arms. As she surrounded herself with the church's loving atmosphere, Marie began to heal and grow. With each passing day, Marie felt a sense of freedom and joy that she had never known before. She was no longer the lost and broken person she once was. Instead, she was a strong and vibrant individual, filled with hope and happiness. As she looked out at the sunny Florida landscape, Marie's eyes shone with a newfound radiance, reflecting the beauty and joy that had blossomed in her soul. The church was more than just a building. It was a community of people who genuinely cared for one another. For Marie, this small community became a second family, filled with love, light, and faith. From the outside, the church appeared ordinary, but inside, it felt like a warm and welcoming home. The people gathered there were united by their shared faith, and time seemed to stand still as they came together. Marie, however, was hiding a secret. She was pregnant, and the weight of this secret was crushing her. She felt ashamed and fearful, and only a few close people knew the truth. In June 2021, at the age of 37, Marie gave birth to her second daughter, Grace. As the news spread through the quiet town, people began to wonder who the father of the child was. The truth was painful. The father was a man Marie had been dating briefly, but he had turned out to be abusive and hurtful. When Marie became pregnant, he disappeared without a word. Left alone and broken, Marie found solace in the church. The Flanders family and the local community showed Marie and her newborn daughter overwhelming kindness and acceptance. They provided a safe and nurturing environment, filling a vital need in Marie's life by becoming like a substitute family. Through their selfless support, Marie was able to find the courage, optimism, and start the healing process from the trauma of her past. Marie had been feeling trapped in her life, and just 3 months after giving birth to her daughter, she made a shocking decision that left everyone stunned. She posted a mysterious message on social media announcing that she was leaving, not just her city, but also her family and friends behind. Marie had been secretly planning her escape, careful not to reveal her intentions to anyone, fearing they would try to talk her out of it. She only hinted at her dreams and expressed her love for her loved ones, making it clear that she was leaving for good. Her departure left many questions unanswered. Where was she going? What path would she take? And would she achieve her dreams? Marie's loved ones were devastated, worried sick about her safety and unsure of what to do next. The uncertainty surrounding her disappearance only added to their anxiety. Jeff, Marie's ex-husband, was particularly frantic and decided to contact the police to help find her. As the days passed, the worry and fear for Marie's fate only intensified. Marie's sudden disappearance from Fort Walton Beach had barely stopped making headlines when a disturbing revelation emerged. She had left behind her 3-month-old daughter. This news sparked immediate concern from Marie's sister, Esther, who knew her siblings' devotion to her children. "This is out of character for her," Esther said, her voice shaking. "She's always been extremely protective of her kids." Those who knew Marie were shocked by her disappearance. As a mother, she had always been exemplary, particularly with her 7-year-old daughter, Paris. Marie's ex-husband, Jeff, was especially stunned when he learned that she had stopped visiting Paris, as they had been inseparable. Now, at 37, Marie had vanished without a trace. While she had the right to start anew, the police couldn't ignore the fact that she had left her young child behind. The police analyzed Marie's recent messages and discovered a peculiar aspect: her writing style had changed significantly from before. This led them to suspect that she might be under duress or that the messages were fabricated. An investigation was launched, which soon impacted Marie's personal life. Questions arose about the identity of her daughter Grace's father and the nature of their relationship with Marie. However, even Marie's sister Esther was unable to confirm or deny these suspicions. The police were faced with a complex web of secrets surrounding Marie's disappearance, including the mysterious messages and the uncertainty about Grace's father. In an effort to clarify the situation, the police spoke with Tanya and James Flanders. They revealed that Marie had a history of disappearing temporarily without explanation. The Flanders also shared that Marie had been diagnosed with bipolar disorder, which could have contributed to her erratic behavior. A few weeks before she vanished, Marie experienced a severe episode of depression. She began taking medication but was forced to stop due to her pregnancy. Feeling extremely unwell, Marie asked the Flanders family to care for her daughter while she rested. After lunch, Marie lay down to rest, and Tanya and Grace went out shopping. James stayed with Marie to keep an eye on her, but he left for a short time to go home. When he returned, he was shocked to find that Marie and her car were nowhere to be found. The Flanders family immediately launched a search for Marie. They scoured the streets, checking the parking lots of every building, but found no sign of her. Then, James had an idea to check the airport, and to their astonishment, they found Marie's car parked there. Using the spare keys, James drove the car back home. When investigators examined the car, they did not find any suspicious marks or evidence that could lead to Marie's whereabouts. The investigators returned to the airport, hoping to find new leads. Their plan was to review the parking lot camera footage, as the airport is required to keep this information on file. They also hoped to find Marie's ticket, which might have her fingerprints on it. However, when they found the ticket, it didn't yield any useful results. The ticket was clean, with no fingerprints or other clues that could aid in the investigation. A search of Marie's car also turned up nothing, and the parking ticket didn't contain any fingerprints. To make matters worse, the cameras in the parking lot weren't working on the day Marie disappeared. This lack of footage was a significant setback for the investigation, leaving the question of whether Marie's disappearance was a tragic accident or a carefully planned escape. As the investigation continued, the police began to suspect that Marie's disappearance might be more sinister than initially thought. They reclassified the case as a murder investigation and shifted their focus to the mysterious father of Marie's child, Grace. The police returned to the church, hoping to find some answers to their questions. Who was Grace's father, and what role did he play in Marie's disappearance? The church, where Marie had found solace, was filled with rumors and speculation. Parishioners whispered about Marie's secret and the plan that had been weighing on her mind. Marie had been struggling with depression and had considered an abortion, but the Flanders family, who were eager to expand their family, had strongly opposed this idea. The Flanders asked Marie to leave her baby with them, while hypocritically offering to help her. Unbeknownst to others, they desperately wanted a second child, despite both being over 40. One parishioner claimed that Marie's baby, Grace, was a reward from above for the Flanders' good deeds. The situation took a turn when Jeff, Marie's ex-husband, arrived on the scene. He was not the father of the child but had information that could solve the mystery. Jeff revealed that he had noticed Marie's pregnancy and had questioned her about the father. Marie lied, saying she was a surrogate mother for the Flanders. However, the investigation that followed revealed the truth. Police spoke with Tanya's friends, who were also church members, and eventually, the truth came to light. It turned out that the father of the child was James, and the conception was natural. This meant that James's wife, Tanya, had to silently accept the situation. The revelation caught the investigators' attention, and the Flanders were summoned for questioning once again. Tanya was the only one who showed up for questioning. She confirmed the information and added that she was present when the child was conceived. According to her, everything happened with the mutual consent of all parties involved. After Marie disappeared, disturbing details about her relationship with James and Tanya came to light. It turned out that James was intimately involved with both women, which was not just infidelity but a form of polygamy. At one point, they even celebrated the child's birthday together, taking a photo of James, Tanya, and Marie posing as a happy family. However, this photo was meant to mislead, suggesting that the celebration was only for Tanya and that Marie was not involved. But after questioning Tanya's friends, the investigation uncovered new information that revealed the true nature of their relationship. Although Tanya claimed that Marie was initially happy with the arrangement, it became clear that this was no longer the case at some point. Marie's feelings for her daughter Grace were stirred after she was born, and she became hesitant to give her up to Tanya. According to friends, Marie's reservations fueled her jealousy of Tanya, sparking suspicion that Marie might not want to surrender her child to her rival and planned to steal James away from her. These rumors swiftly elevated Tanya to the top of the suspect list. Following Marie's disappearance, all Tanya's problems would essentially dissolve, granting her the opportunity to raise Grace solo and retain her status as James's beloved wife. However, 2 months had passed since Marie vanished, yet no leads emerged. Investigators diligently attempted to unravel the mysteries surrounding Marie's disappearance using available tools, including GPS data. Despite its limitations in 2011, investigators focused on analyzing phone records and message logs to gather more information. The records revealed that Marie had accompanied James to the airport, but Tanya was absent. This development coincided with the unexpected visit of Jason, a young priest who often represented James and ultimately chose to share information with investigators. Jason shared with others a conversation he had unintentionally overheard after Marie vanished. James expressed his distress and concern, stating that he would have to leave the country due to Marie's disappearance, but he couldn't disclose the details. He only mentioned that something terrible had occurred during Marie's severe depression. Prior to her disappearance, James had stayed with Marie at a clinic for a few days, while Jason temporarily took his place. Meanwhile, rumors about polygamy began circulating among the church parishioners, which shocked Jason when he discovered them. Upon James' return from the hospital, Jason decided to discuss the matter with him. Jason asked James about his relationship with Marie. James was honest and admitted to having a romantic relationship with both Marie and his wife. He revealed that he and Marie had a heated argument before her disappearance, which escalated into a physical fight. However, James insisted that Marie was alive and well at the time of her disappearance. Following their conversation, James decided to resign as pastor and soon left the city with his family, including Tanya and Grace, to move to Arizona. Shortly before their departure, Marie's family had contacted the Flanders family to collect some of Marie's belongings. As a result, investigators obtained Marie's phone, which may have contained crucial information. The investigation into Marie's disappearance was initially hindered because most of the data on James' phone had been deleted. However, investigators were able to recover some fragments, including a video of James promoting precious metals. This finding raised suspicions, particularly since the case took place in 2011, when digital evidence was easier to erase and surveillance was less widespread. At that time, DNA detection technologies were still in their infancy, making it seem like criminals could easily escape punishment. However, the field of digital forensics was also advancing, and it was this expertise that ultimately helped crack the case. 3 years after Marie vanished, a new program became available that enabled investigators to recover data from phones and computers. This technology allowed them to access messages between Marie and James, which painted a disturbing picture of their relationship. The recovered messages included explicit images, some of which were taken inside a church. Perhaps most damningly, Marie's emails to James revealed her deep desire to leave Fort Walton Beach, fearing the place was cursed. Her messages hinted at her desperation to escape with her child. A chain of unexpected and dramatic events led to the Flanders family's deepest secrets being exposed. Flanders said, "When someone spreads rumors or harms me, I want them to cease to exist." Given James' situation, shrouded in darkness and fear, it's possible he fulfilled this ominous promise. Despite the lack of Marie's body, there was sufficient evidence to issue an arrest warrant for James on charges of second-degree murder. However, the prosecutor faced a significant challenge, convincing the jury of James' guilt without the victim's body. James and his lawyer were in a desperate situation with an uncertain future ahead, so they made a drastic decision as a last resort to try and turn things around. If James revealed Marie's body's location, he would be charged with manslaughter, a crime with a more moderate sentence. After years of anguish, Marie's family agreed to this deal. James's words revealed a disturbing truth. He and Marie had a tumultuous relationship, frequently arguing about her struggles with depression. During one heated argument, Marie physically lashed out at James, and in an attempt to calm her down, he inadvertently knocked her to the ground. Tragically, she lost her life. In the aftermath, James was overcome with guilt and regret. He had unknowingly contributed to Marie's death, and his attempts to revive her were unsuccessful. The investigators eventually discovered Marie's body in the yard of James's house, buried 5 feet underground and wrapped in a blanket. The discovery was a shock to everyone involved, as they had been searching for her for years. The consequences of James's actions were severe. He was convicted of manslaughter and sentenced to 15 years in prison, with the possibility of parole after 11 years. His wife, Tanya, claimed to have been unaware of James's crime and was deeply shocked by the news of Marie's death. Marie's body was discovered after a delay, which hindered experts from determining the cause of her death. This delayed discovery may have impacted the direction of the investigation. 5 years later, Marie's family and friends were finally able to lay her to rest and find closure at her funeral. Her sister Esther might have even sung a final song in her honor.